meeting of the Board of Supervisors, the Liquor and Entertainment Board. Boy, a whole lot of them to order. Board of Supervisors, Liquor and Entertainment Board, Redevelopment Authority, Board of Health, and a joint meeting with the Carson City School District Board of Trustees. We'll be doing those all day today and into the evening. Could we have a roll call, please, Kathy, for the
Supervisor
record, please?
Abad? Here. Supervisor Bonkowski? Supervisor Bagwell? Here. Supervisor Shirk? Here. Mayor Kroll? Here. Quorum is present.
Could we call on our good friend Ken Haskins to get us started, and for this long day, give us a good one.
Long day today, huh, Mayor? Yeah. You have a little bit of control.
Not as much as you do.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day and for this wonderful community that we call home. I ask you to be with our mayor and our supervisors today as they consider a very busy agenda, that you grant them wisdom and knowledge and help them to make good decisions on behalf of all who live there, all who live here in Carson City. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Ken. Yep. We're calling Chuck Crittenden to lead us in the pledge. Come on up, Chuck.
Please join me in our pledge of allegiance to our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of America, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Ken.
All right, we're going to move to item 5, public comment. Anybody have public comment? We take it at the beginning, at the end, and during most of the time. Anybody want to weigh in this morning? Okay, well, I don't see anybody, so at that time I'm going to ask the city manager to weigh in with kind of a little special presentation to get us started off today.
Mr. Mayor, and for the public at large who maybe didn't know this, but the U.S. Navy just christened the newest the newest ship in a class that I'm about to show you. Carson City was honored in that the United States naval ship Carson City was recently christened down in Alabama. Mayor Kroll, as well as his wife, First Lady of Carson City, Susan Kroll, had the honor of actually being the ship's sponsor. So if for everyone's enjoyment, I'm going to show a short video of the not only about the ship, but of the christening ceremony itself. So, Mr. Mayor.
Get us fired up.
These are all the ships in the class. Sorry, Mayor, it's what happens when a Marine tries to operate machinery.
So that's when you saw it on the, it's twin hull, and the commissioning ceremony was actually underneath the ship, because the ship was, on blocks getting ready to launch it. So the commissioning ceremony, you're at one end, and you can just look 300 feet down to the other end. I mean, it's really rather impressive. I mean, it's huge under there. So it was quite a weekend for Carson City. So thanks for showing that, and we'll have to see if they can crank up the video, the music a little better. So anyway.
We'll do better next time, Mr.
No
Mayor.
problem, my
I
friend.
apologize
Okay,
for that.
all right.
But that was the Navy Marine Corps team in action on that ship as well.
Well, and one of the rooms is called the 312 room, and that's because it carries 312 Marines, carries 600 tons, short tons, plus 312 Marines. It's pretty impressive. I mean, and I got to say, the seats and stuff like that are like aircraft seats in there. Still, I think hopefully you're not in there for a whole long time. But so anyway, and we are going to try and get it to the Sacramento, so we can all go down and have a look and get some of your Marines down there. Okay, all right. Anybody else want to weigh in this morning? Okay, I don't see any. Let's now go to the agenda. The city manager just advised me before the meeting that he wants to pull the Enigma, I think I said that right, lease to work on some issues on that one. And also, Congressman Amodei can't be here this morning, but he wants to reschedule till February. And Congressman Amodei was at the christening and did a wonderful job of talking about Carson City and the Navy. It was well done. And while I'm saying that, I want to compliment the Navy League and for all it did. They were just marvelous. The entire Navy League, both in Carson City and in Mobile Navy League, were wonderful. It couldn't have been done without them. So, okay. Any other changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Board members, any changes? All right, we're ready to move to some other big good things. You ready? All right, let's recess from the dais and come down to the front and ask the Cassie folks to come up and give us some money. Thank you.
That was
All right. Test. How you doing?
doing well.
All right, all right, all right. So, oh, here we go. This is something that you want to present to us? Wow. Why don't you talk a little bit about this? You and your folks. Come on, Lisa. Here you go. I'll hold.
All right.
I'll hold this. I'll take this.
Here you go. Well, Cassie, Carson Animal Services Initiative, we were formed in September of 2012 with the objective of raising money to help Carson City build the much-needed new animal shelter. And our community truly came together, and our community of amazing volunteers, and this is just a small part of the folks who have volunteered, but truly the core group. We've come together and we've held many fundraisers and outreach programs. We've talked in schools and gone to service clubs. We have hosted wine tastings and barbecues and pooch plunges and 5K9s and pictures with Santa, all to help our community get the shelter. And we are so incredibly privileged today to donate $200,000 to Carson City toward the new shelter. And we're not finished. We will continue to raise funds, and we will be continuing to help finance purchasing equipment for the new shelter. The wish list, we're going to meet that wish list. We want to help with animal advocacy, spay-neuter programs, and a benevolence fund for folks who don't have the means to provide the medical assistance for their pets. So we're here. You're stuck with Carson Animal Services Initiative, and we are so privileged and grateful to be able to do this for our fine city.
Well, yeah, lot of claps. Well, to Cassie, on behalf of your entire community, thank you. This demonstrates, the commitment. I know I was talking to Anna before, and you thought, but this is a big lift to do and didn't expect it to happen that quick. But, thanks to your efforts, we're able to do this no-kill animal shelter. And it is a testament to what dedication, vision, and hard work does. So on behalf of your community and all of us, thank you, and thank your organization for a wonderful gift and a wonderful start to the animal shelter. So now let's come up and get a picture with all of us up here and go from there. Come on.
Why don't you keep the check?
Okay. How about now? There it goes. Okay. I'll read it again here. Whereas in concert with the presidential proclamation of January as National Mentoring Month and My Brother's Keeper Mentoring Initiative, Carson City is partnering with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northern Nevada to proclaim January as Carson City Mentoring Month and January 21st as Carson City Mentoring Day. And whereas the goals of Carson City Mentoring Day are to raise awareness of mentoring, recruit individuals to mentor, and encourage organizations to engage and integrate quality mentoring into their efforts. And whereas a mentor devotes time to a young person to help them discover personal strength and achieve their potential through a structured, supported, and trusting friendship. And whereas quality mentoring encourages positive choices, promotes self-esteem, supports academic achievement, and introduces young people to new ideas. And whereas Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northern Nevada is effective in preventing school violence and discipline problems, substance abuse, incarceration, teen pregnancy, truancy, and other risky behaviors. And whereas research shows that young people at risk are not completing high school who had a mentor were 24% more likely to graduate, 55% more likely to enroll in college, and 81% more likely to participate and hold leadership positions in sports or extracurricular activities, and 78% more likely to volunteer in their own communities. And whereas youth development experts agree that mentoring is critical to the social, emotional, and cognitive development of youth, helping them to navigate the path to adulthood more successfully. Now, therefore, I, Robert Kroll, Mayor of Carson City, on behalf of the board, do hereby proclaim Carson City Mentoring Month and January 21st as Carson City Mentoring Day, dated this 21st day of January 2016. It's a big issue, and Liza, you know that as much as everybody, right? So here you go. Tell us a little bit about Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Mentoring Month.
Thank you very much. Well, first, I think most of you know Chuck Crittenden. Chuck is a big brother here in Carson City, and this is your new match support specialist. She's on week 2. This is Katie. So one of the things that makes Big Brothers Big Sisters different from some of the other mentoring programs is that we have professional case managers that support the families, the volunteers, and the children in our program, and make sure that people are safe, that they have resources, and help them navigate. Because oftentimes, a match may be put together with a child who's, 8 or 9 years old, and any of you who are parents know that when they become teenagers, things change, and you may need resources to deal with those changes. I'm very proud to say that last year, age-eligible youth in our program had an 86% high school graduation rate. And all of our kids live in poverty, and other children in poverty who are age eligible to graduate only had a 65% graduation rate. So this program truly works. And I will tell you right now, we need more volunteers here in Carson. You can do it for as little as an hour a week. So if you have any interest, it's a great fun. I've been matched with my little sister now for just over 2 years. It's a great excuse to be able to go see movies that you might think you're too old to go see, or do other activities that people might go, why is she doing that? She's older. So anyway, it's a great thing. I've learned so much from my little sister. I have a greater appreciation of the life I have, and I have a greater appreciation of how hard it is to navigate out of poverty. So thank you, Mayor and Supervisors, for this. This is very important. Thank you. So this is Katie Paul. She's brand new to our agency. She just started this is your second week, right?
Third week.
Third week, okay. So she's well tenured now. But she has ties here in Carson City. What did you tell me earlier?
I believe your son actually was my computer teacher in elementary school.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, small world.
You are.
And as I said, Chuck is a big brother. You've been a big brother now for almost a year?
Almost a year.
Almost a year, that's what I thought. So, and one of our past board chairs introduced him to our organization, and I actually sat down with the two of you and we talked about Cassie a while ago and nonprofit info.
You were a big help to us, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Your guidance. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go get a picture. You want to do a picture? Okay. Here, I'll do it. I'm just tweeting the other.
Oh, nice. Okay. Thank you.
All right, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Let me take one more for you. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Lindsay, where's Lindsay? I need to meet you, Lindsay. I think, board members, you know Lindsay? You all know Lindsay. Lindsay, you're the, there it is. You're the new cooperative extension?
Yes, sir.
Okay, coordinator, extension educator. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we do National Radon Month, okay?
All right.
Go ahead, come on. All right, introduce yourself.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Lindsay Chichester, the new extension educator with the Nebraska Cooperative Extension. And I am originally from Topaz, California, so just on the other side of the border, almost a local, is what I've been told the last few weeks. I started on January 4th, and a little bit about me, I was in Lyon County 4-H for 10 years, went to college in Oklahoma, then Texas. Right after college, I started with Nebraska's Extension Service, and spent 6 years there. Had the opportunity to come back closer to home, and very happy to be here in Carson City and helping all of you and learning about the programs you do. I will be, as of right now, working with the community garden and the urban wildlife. Some of you in the room, I probably have appointments to meet, and if I don't recognize your face, I apologize. So anyways, whatever we can do at the extension office to help out. We also are the people who are in charge of 4-H. So if you've got youth in the room, it's a great group. We do informal adult education as well. So. Want me to lead us into radon?
I do. Lead us into radon. Go ahead. You want to do it, or you want me to read the you want to talk about radon first, or you want me to read the proclamation?
How about I introduce my colleagues and then...
Go introduce your colleagues. Go.
All right.
All right.
So this is National Radon Month, and I won't take anything away from them. But in the room today, we have Susan Howe. She's our Nevada Program Director for Radon, and with her is Jamie Gomes, who's the Radon Education Coordinator. So if you aren't familiar with radon, these ladies know more about it than probably all of us in the room put together. So I'll turn it over to them to tell a little bit about it.
Here, I'll start. My name's Jamie Royce Gomes, and so thank you for this proclamation. This is the 8th year that we have accepted a proclamation, and it's really important to raise awareness of radon because it is the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. So the EPA has an action level. They say that if your home is tested at 4 picocuries per liter of air or higher, you should take action. Picocuries is basically just a measurement of how much radioactivity is found per 1 liter of air. So if your home is at 4 or higher, you should take some sort of action. And to put this into perspective, if your home is at a yearly average of 4 picocuries per liter, then the risk of you developing lung cancer is the same as somebody who smokes about half a pack of cigarettes a day. So it's really important to test your home for radon. And you can reduce the risk of this lung cancer by testing your home and fixing your home if there is a problem. So test kits are free for all Nevada residents from now until the end of February. You can go to the Carson City Cooperative Extension Office at 2621 North Gate Lane. They're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Or you can even call our hotline 1-888-RADON-10 and we can figure out how to get a kit to you. So I'm going to give this mic over to Susan, and she's going to give you some localized statistics about Carson City.
Thank you. So why should Carson City residents or the whole county be concerned? Well, 40% of the homes that have already tested for radon have found that they have a potential radon problem. So that amounts to almost 600 homes in Carson City County out of nearly 1,500 valid test results. Now, about 1,700 homes have tried to test their homes for radon. Of course, not all of those test results were usable, but that only amounts to 7% of the housing units counted by the census in 2014. So we need a lot more homes to be tested because you can't tell what your radon result is based on a map or other statistics of your neighbors. We're having a program next Monday at the Senior Center at 6 o'clock. I think it's 6 o'clock. And we hope that many of you or your friends and neighbors can come in here and learn more about radon, how to test for it, and how to fix homes that have a radon problem. Thank you.
A friend of mine loaned me his electronic radon calculator, the one you plug in. I assume that those are sufficient as well, right? They're not? Yeah.
They can't be calibrated. They will give you an estimate of what it is. It's not totally accurate. Whatever.
We don't know if it's reading the correct level to you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because one of the readings came out 20. No, it came out 2.5, so I'm just asking. That's good. All right. You ready for a proclamation? We're ready, board? Okay. This is a proclamation for National Radon Action Month, January 2016. Whereas many Carson City residents don't know about radon, yet need to know for the safety and well-being of their families, as radon is a colorless, odorless, naturally occurring radioactive gas that is the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. And whereas the United States EPA estimates 21,000 people in the United States die each year from lung cancer caused by indoor radon exposure and lung and bronchitis cancer. Exposure and lung and bronchitis cancer kills more people in a year than any other cancer. And whereas radon kills more people than secondhand smoke, drunken driving, falls in the home, or falls at the Boys and Girls Club, Lori, I just kid because she did have an accident at the Boys and Girls Club. It was not her fault. Okay, let's go back to here. So don't mean to make light of it, but I did. Okay, falls in the home, drowning or home fires, and whereas any home in Carson City may have elevated levels of radon, even if neighboring homes do not, and living in a home where an average radon level of 4 picocuries per liter of air poses a similar risk of developing lung cancer as smoking about half a pack a day of cigarettes. And whereas testing is the only way to know if a radon problem exists, and testing is easy and inexpensive, and when identified problems can be fixed. And whereas the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension, the Nevada Division of Public and Behavioral Health, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency support efforts to encourage all Carson City residents to test their homes for radon, mitigate radon problems, and have new homes built with radon-reducing materials and features. Now, therefore, I, Robert Kroll, Mayor of Carson City, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim January 2016 as National Radon Action Month in our very own community of Carson City. So here, congratulations, thanks for doing this. This is the 7th time or 8th time? 8th. It's a big deal, and it's important for the people to know because it is colorless, odorless, and it's something you wouldn't think about doing. Okay. All right. So let's go get some pictures up here. Come on.
It's a very complicated piece of machinery, Mr. Mayor.
We have another part of our agenda that's a very special part of the day as well, and that's to thank and congratulate our employees for their length of service and their service to Carson City. And so I'd like first to call up Ted Yost. Ted? Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Carson City's Public Works. Ted, this is a longevity award issued to you in recognition and appreciation for 10 years of continuous dedicated service for Carson City, given this 21st day of January 2016. Thank you on behalf of your community. Thanks for doing what you do to keep everything running smoothly. Thank you. Here you go. And come on up here. All right. And Uriah. Good morning, Uriah. How are you this morning? Good. How are you? Good. This is 10 years as well. How about that? You don't look old enough to have 10 years here. Almost. This longevity award is issued to you in recognition and appreciation for 10 years of continuous dedication to service for Carson City. Given this 21st day of January, we need to fix this because we've got January 21 twice. Given this 21st day of January 2016. We'll fix that, okay? On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for everything that you do to keep things moving smoothly and doing what you do. All right, thank you. Come on up. I didn't see that. Huh? We're going to have to do it all. We're going to have to do it on all of them because somehow these things happen. Kevin. Kevin Nyberg, good morning. How you doing today? All right. All right. Boy. This is, Kevin, this is longevity award is issued to you in recognition and appreciation for 10 years of continuous dedicated service to Carson City, given this 21st day of January 2016. On behalf of a grateful community, thanks for everything you do. Thanks for keeping us safe. And thanks for just making sure that we live in the best community in the whole world. Thanks. All right. Come on up. Okay, we're going to now recess as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Liquor and Entertainment Board. And let the record reflect that the entire Board of Supervisors is here, and we've been joined by Sheriff Furlong, so we have all members of the Liquor and Entertainment Board are present. We're on public comment. Anybody under public comment under the Liquor and Entertainment Board? Seeing none, we'll now move to item 11, potential issuance of a business license to approve a liquor license to approve Darren Maxfield as an additional liquor manager for Pizza Factory of Carson City. Lena, you want to take us through this?
This item is for possible action to approve Darren Maxfield as an additional liquor manager for Pizza Factory of Carson City, liquor license number 16-21613, located at 3120 Highway 50 East, Suite 3. Mr. Maxfield is a partner in the business and is being added as an additional liquor manager. The current liquor manager is still on staff, and staff is recommending approval.
Mr. Maxfield, come on up. This is an ongoing business, and you're kind of just stepping in to help out in case somebody else leaves, is that right?
Yes.
There you go. And Sheriff, there have been minimal problems out there? Minimal? Okay. Any questions of Darren? Anybody? Anybody? Motion's in order.
Short and sweet, just the way you like it, right?
Awesome.
I move to approve Darren Maxfield as an additional liquor manager for Pizza Factory of Carson City, liquor license 16-21613, located at 3120 Highway 50 East, Suite 3.
Second.
A motion and second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, thanks, Darren. Go sell some pizza. All right. We'll now move to item number 12, concluding public comment under Liquor and Entertainment Board. Anybody? I don't see any. Then we will, unless there's an objection, we will adjourn as the Liquor and Entertainment Board and will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. Item 15 has been pulled for future consideration. We'll now move to item 16. This is matters with respect to the building code. Who's going to do this? Do you need help? You need a minute, Lee?
Okay, good morning. Sorry for that. We will get going here shortly. For that, Lee Plemmel, the Community Development Director, I'd just like to give a brief introduction. We're starting with item 16A here, which is action regarding the adoption of the 2015 Northern Nevada Energy Code. Sean Keating, our building official with Charles Abbott Associates, will be giving the presentation and going over this with you. And as well as we have 3 items on the agenda related to building permits and the building department. This first one is adoption of energy codes that are required and mandated through state law. Along with that, we'll be adopting some amendments regionally that are agreed to by the state to kind of modify them that are specific to our area, and Sean will go over that for you and be able to answer questions. So I turn it over to Sean.
Good morning. For the record, Sean Keating, Chief Building Official with Community Development Department. What I'd like to do is, because of the public understanding of the Conservation Code, is cover briefly the history of how the energy efficiency or the conservation codes are applying to Carson City, or more likely the region of Northern Nevada. In the last few years, actually specifically the last 6 years, we've taken a stance that we do things regionally instead of unilaterally by the municipality by themselves. This again is another example of that approach. The building officials with some of the professionals throughout the area and associations collaborated on making up an amendment packet to what we perceive as a mandate by the state to cycle to the next cycle of the Energy Conservation Code. So with that being said, I'm going to...
Which of our surrounding, Sean, which of our surrounding communities are included in the list that you've been working with?
The amendment packet, you have the cover page that I'll actually put up on the slide presentation in a few minutes. The drafters of this amendment packet are realistically 12 entities, being builders associations, municipalities, designers in the local area. There's 12 of us that drafted it. However, right away, I know we're first up on the board as far as the adoption of the amendment packet. The city of Reno is going to adopt the same packet. Washoe County is going to adopt the same packet. City of Sparks is going to adopt it. Lyon County, Story County. There's a number of people that aren't on the actual amendment packet as the writer, but they have considered adopting it in their own jurisdictions, vices going unilaterally with their own amendments.
Well, I don't mean to, I do mean to interrupt you here because I want to know, I mean, we frequently get complaints that whatever code we have here is not the same one they use in Lyon County, and that or they interpret it differently, or the same with Douglas County. So I want to know, are Douglas and Lyon County, are they included in these negotiations?
Lyon County, I've talked with their community development director in Lyon County. He was one of the authors in this amendment packet. They will be appearing in the month of February in front of their elected body to move forward on this amendment. I've also talked with our southern portion, southern jurisdiction there being Douglas County. They like the amendment packet. They're talking, as they were not one of the creators or writers of the package, they are looking also to adopt this amendment packet as well. The amendment packet itself gives us the workability on the day-to-day issues that people see a need from this region. So I believe that some of the other rule parts will evaluate these packages and move forward. Just so you know, the adoption period is from January to March of this year, where all of us are going back to our elected bodies with this proposal.
Okay, fine. Good. Proceed. Thank you.
Just to bring us all up to the history behind it, as the NRS changed, the state is required to adopt the most current energy conservation code. They started that in 2014. They held a series of 3 public forums. These public forums took public input. They lawfully adopted it in July of 2015. Prior to that, we, as the local jurisdictions, looked at how we were going to manage or handle this code, introductory and implementing the code itself. So that's where we composed, or we decided we are going to look at what are we going to do to get this package off the floor. Originally in January and February of 2015, we evaluated, all the building officials from this region evaluated going straight to the 2015 International Energy Conservation Code. We also reviewed the Southern amendments because our counterparts there have a different perspective. Obviously, they're a different region. We decided that probably wasn't the course of action. So what we did is we formed the Energy Conservation Committee. It met for almost 6.5 to 7 months. They composed of contractors, building officials, designers, and we took amendment adoptions from the entire region. So they were submitted electronically. It was submitted in person to the committee. We evaluated it, and we voted on it as the 12 members of that committee. As I said before, we're currently looking at the local adoptions January through March of this year. We have a letter in your package that the Governor's Office of Energy has already evaluated our package and accepted our package, so that we were fearful that we would come up with something that, because the state statute requires us to go through them to get the amendment, that we were fearful that we'd come up with an amendment that they would not approve. So we got their written assurance that they agree with the contents of our package. Just so you're aware, this package the amendment package will not go in effect until July of 2016. That also means the Energy Conservation Code to 2012 will not go in effect as well to July of 2016. We did that with the ideal of implement this in a more sound, practical manner. So there was, instead of coming for adoption and then actually implementing the following month. I believe in the history of these codes, that used to be one of the major problems. We corrected that. This is the actual packet cover page of the package. These are the writers of the amendment packet. These were the same voting members on the committee. To kind of talk briefly about this amendment packet, there are 16 items that we amended in the 2012 Energy Conservation Code. 5 of them had to deal with definitions, 5 of them in residential. 5 in commercial and 6 in residential. So of the entire code book, that's the entire amendments that we had. With that being said, I wanted to clearly make sure that the public was aware of how we're doing this. How we implemented it so far is we held a series of 2 workshops. One was held in Fernley in December. We had probably about 60 participants from the northern area. These 60 individuals came from, or these 60 folks were from designers, builders, all across the board. It was sponsored by the Governor's Office of the Department of Energy. There was a lot of working collaboration of how this code was going to be implemented. I conducted 1 workshop last week. We sent a mass email out to a lot of professional people. That's the people we wanted to talk to. Very minimum participation, but I would have expected that until this amendment package is approved. We're actually planning on having 2 additional workshops, one in March in the evening hours, so that workers can actually be there and figure out how this code applies to them. And then we're going to do it right before the code is implemented in June as well. So there's a progressive process by which we're looking at implementing this code and the amendment packet. Yeah. With that being said, I'm asking the board's consideration to cycle through to the next cycle of the code so that we can begin process of talking about it and how to implement it.
We're okay to go ahead, board? Go ahead. I think we're ready. Public comment? Anybody?
Good morning, Mayor, Supervisors. I apologize for my tardiness. You guys flew through those first 15 items.
We moved.
I wanted to come and express our support for the amendment package that's been put forward. Sean has shown a lot of leadership on this, and really, this has been a very inclusive process. As you can see from the title sheet, all of the major construction organizations in the north participated in this process. There's a couple things. I'm sorry, Aaron West, for the record, Aaron West with Nevada Builders. As you can imagine, we get a little nervous when we have international codes that are being drafted far, far away and then being forced on us. As Sean indicated, there's an interesting dynamic there where state law mandates that the Governor's Office of Energy adopt the most recent energy efficiency code, regardless of what's in it. So for the building officials to get together, get in front of this, and really look at, since it was already adopted at the state level, what could we do to provide necessary amendments to make it more palatable at the local level, and then for the state to buy off on that was a huge win for all of us. So very supportive, and would appreciate your support.
Thanks, Aaron. Go.
Aaron, in your opinion, dealing with the building industry, what is the reaction and what is the impact of the commissioning portion of this for commercial buildings?
Well, I think we're mindful that from the international perspective, everyone is trying to get more efficient, right? And it's the challenge is that we feel that most of the major gains have already been obtained, and at this point, as we continue to ratchet down, we're spending dollars to shave pennies, and so that's where it really becomes imperative that we work at the local level to try and we did. I would say that we helped our folks our building officials by pursuing some legislative relief during the last legislative session, and that gave us a little more flexibility. So I think between the two, we're happy with where we're at.
I'd like to tap into that. So everybody understands what commissioning is similar to the mayor's presentation about the SHIP. Any building that is actually commissioned, we call it commissioning, is all the systems are checked. They're checked by the owner's representative, the contractor of record, or the designer. What lacked in the code in the previous cycles was the ability for the building official to actually monitor how these systems actually integrated with one another. The minimum standards required specifications of how they act, what they do, but there was no correlation between interaction. This portion was introduced to give us the ability to look at that, so that when you say, for example, we have the MAC Center, we have some complex systems that are actually integrated within the building itself. Now we require a third party to verify that these systems are compatible and they run as designed. Usually this has been an option to the owners of the building or the project going forward. Now there's language in the code that actually gives us some power to make sure these systems work together. And just to answer one question with that, well, that was one of our amendments that we actually applied in the packet, was dealing with commissioning. Nevada's regional. Nevada's unique. We have design build where contractors are licensed through the State Contractors Board to actually do their own work and their own designs. If we went by the letter of the code, they would have to hire a third party, so you're having a contractor hire an engineer to evaluate their work. That in our opinion was not adequate. So what we did is we mended that out. We reflected some of the language in there to collaborate with the state language of the law, so that those individuals who do design build can move forward with the commissioning on their own.
Very good. Anything else? Any other public? Aaron, thank you. Are you going to stick around for the next item?
I'll stay as long as you'd like me.
Why don't you stick through, because we're going to take up an ordinance and then looking at the contract and performance of the building department. Thanks. All right. All right, motion's in order.
Bill number?
Bill number is 101.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 101, an ordinance amending the Carson City Municipal Code, Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Chapter 15.05, Building Code, Section 15.05.020, Adoption and Administration of Building Codes, by adopting the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code and the 2015 Northern Nevada Code amendments.
Second.
There's a motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, let's take up 16B, technical amendments to
16B. Over a year ago, when I first came to Carson City, I noticed a few typographical errors within Title 15 that referred to references for where to go. I've held on to this until we appeared in front of this body so that we can change them all at one time. These are simple errors that were created when they revised the code in 2013. They did not identify the language of the code to move sections down as they did. I will tell you, in researching this, these three issues have not caused us any problems. However, they're errors that need to be fixed within the code.
public comment. Anybody? Board? Motion's in order.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 102, an ordinance amending the Carson City Municipal Code, Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Chapter 15.05, Building Code, Section 15.05.020, Sections 101.4, 109.2, and 110.3.1 to correct technical errors in code section references.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay. Thanks, Sean. Thanks. All right. Lee, are you taking the next one?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce this item.
All right.
Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. This item is to report, it's a presentation and report regarding the Charles Abbott Associates Building Permit Services Contract and the performance measures established by the contract. So as many know, we have contracted our building permit services in Carson City with Charles Abbott Associates. We're currently under a contract that goes through into September of this year, 2016, before it gets renewed. And probably a lot of people don't know that we have these contract services, and that's good. I mean, the purpose of this, they're well integrated into the city. They sit in the city offices and the community development offices. So to the general public, it should be seamless, and I think it is. And a lot of people don't know that it's outside contract services, and that's kind of the intent and the way it should be. The purpose of this item, is for them, I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and he's going to go through these performance measures. But as part of the contract, there were some performance measures identified in there that they're to report on. So the main purpose of this item is to let them go through that and report on these performance measures and see how they're doing. And I will say, while this is their report, I've reviewed it. Other city management has reviewed it, and we agree with it. Aaron's here from the Builders Association. We like to hear from them, and we keep in touch with them through there. I will say generally that since Charles Abbott has taken over, we've had a lot less comment about the building department in general. I mean, I think it's been a positive move, and that's not just Charles Abbott. I mean, I think a lot of it certainly has to do with Sean and the people that we have in place here. I don't think it's just the company and the fact that it's contract services, but it's the people that they have that we have in place in these positions that has been positive. But with that, I'd like to have Sean go through the performance measures, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions after that. Oh, I'll also note from from Charles Abbott Associates, Ray Profit is here, one of the managers. He's worked with us in the past, so he's also here to answer any questions that may come up about the contract or other things. So, Sean.
For the record again, Sean Keating, Chief Building Official. I'd like to talk about these performance measures in this regard. The Permit Center itself is a collaboration between city staff and Charles Abbott staff. It's an interdependent relationship. We rely on one another. And I say that because it's easy to talk about performance measures with us specifically, and that's what it shouldn't be about. It should be about the entire Permit Center. One of the reasons that I think a lot of conversation you probably haven't heard is when I contacted about somebody who likes what services they get, my goal is to make it seamless. I don't want accolades because those are targeted things that split teams apart. It's a team that I want to build and keep there. So you might hear some good stuff, but I really rather, the ideal is to have it seamless and moving forward progressively without any bad comments or good comments. The thing about it is people are back to work, designers are designing, builders are building, owner builders are out there able to pull permits and be safe. We reduce all the hazards that are out there by having a seamless system. With that being said, I drafted this document some months ago with the whole pretense of giving the board and the public an idea of how we are representing them in their interest. I think this was a realistic document. Two of the performance measures I think we're exceeding the mark. One of them I believe that we're just meeting the mark, and I say that conservatively because of the fact that when it's consistent, then I'll say we're meeting the mark. Conservatively estimate in that regard, it has to deal with permitting. I believe we are way ahead of the performance measure. The performance is 15 days for commercial and 11 days for residential. Our average turnaround time is 10 days, if not 9 days, before somebody either gets a building permit or a correction letter. And just so you're aware, most jurisdictions it's pretty common that the correction letters usually happen on the first round, and they want those comments as soon as back so they can adjust their designs accordingly. So they do appreciate that. With that being said, of the three measures, being the first one was the permitting time. I think I labeled as meeting expectations, but I think we're ahead of the power curve, but I won't say we're exceeding it until the point where we actually are consistent with that expectation. Customer service was the second one. Customer service ranges throughout the Permit Center. I think we've proactively taken great steps in that direction. I believe the perception by the community would be that they can walk in there and get answers to their questions. They can also get documentation to show them what they can move forward with. So with that being said, I believe that we're exceeding that expectation. The third is the building inspections. Building inspections are extremely important in our business. It's the contact that the inspector makes with the people in the field that keeps the project moving forward. I think we're exceeding the expectation. The performance measure was a 2-hour window for actually conducting those inspections. We actually narrowed that down to 1 hour. We give a 1-hour window. We communicate with the local folks, the contractors, and whoever it might be, the permit holders, via any means possible. We talk with them by phone. We talk with them by electronic. We try to get questions answered right away. The realization is that jobs are standing idle if there's questions in the cloud. So what we want to do is get those questions answered, and our inspectors, our inspecting staff in the field help progressively move those projects forward in a teamwork concept. With that being said, I prepared that document for your review so you've truly understood how we were moving forward with what we're doing. In the future, that's always the great thing, is to improve upon what we've already started. I believe we made great strides in the first year. I think we're going to do better in the second year, and that's the idea, is to progressively get better. I think some of the challenges that we're opposed on is implementing the energy conservation code that we just talked about earlier. And then the third thing is integrating more electronics. The economy and the professionals are demanding that we move forward with something like that. We're there, but every year we will get better. The other thing is providing service options at the counter. A lot of, as our owner builder start more foot traffic into the permit center, we would have to supply more counter service options for them to accommodate their needs. And then the last thing, I call it the as-built process. I usually take a lot of phone calls every week about things that were done in the past and they want to get right or they want to get legal with it. I've developed an as-built process where I can give somebody something in writing, how to proceed to move forward to get something that was unpermitted in the past looked at and evaluated and possibly permitted if it meets the criteria. So with that being said, I gave you the performance indicators that we had for those 3 sections, plus where we're going in the future.
I suspect that we'll hear from Aaron here, but before Aaron comes up, I just wanted to say that, you know, my firm interacts with Lee, Susan, and Sean almost on a daily basis, and the improvement that we've seen in our interactions over the last year have really been phenomenal. You know, the team that we have in place now, they're efficient, they're fast, they get back to you right away, and they're solution-oriented rather than having blinders on, looking at the code and saying, here's what the code says in black and white, so here's what you must do. So now it's, when we sit down with these guys, we talk about if there's a solution, and if there's a solution, how do you implement it? Which is really where we want to go, to be service and customer oriented in this city. So I just want to let you guys know, all 3 of you, all the staff, in fact, that I've seen immense improvement, and we're very happy on our portion of the equation. And you know, Aaron and the builders, they're in a different portion of the equation, but I think that he may have similar comments to mine.
Sean, moving forward, is part of maintaining orderly records for the future part of what your performance goals are? In other words, for instance, if a project comes back before us and there's a history to it, and we need to access those records in order to have a better understanding of what went on, you know, a while back ago, are you going to have a more orderly process for maintaining those records?
To answer that question, if we move forward with electronic system, that will eliminate that problem, because then the current records brought in would be automatically electronically there for us. But the problem does exist with the older records, and that has not been one of my priorities as of far, because document retention is really the city. I mean, I can assist on that, but it's a city issue as well. But I think if we move to electronic system, that problem is going to be resolved through that process that's implemented.
I got a couple of questions on page 91. It said, I'd like to know what type of monitoring information is being provided to the city, and by what method are these comments collected?
Is that in, let's see, performance monitoring, is that in paragraph 31 on that page?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we're looking at, this is in the contract. So this is basically the paragraph that says the consultant is responsible for providing monitoring information to the city that shows achievement of the performance standards. So that's really, the primary method is through this type of presentation and going through each one and listing it and going down the list of the performance measures and responding to them, to be able to get the feedback and have this public forums for any other members of the public and the building community to make comments. So that's the type of monitoring. There's also, and as I mentioned to you when you asked the question earlier, they have implemented the customer surveys in paper copy at the counter, which we have minimal success at actually getting people to fill them out, but the few that have been filled out have all rated the building department as excellent. And newly implemented is the government outreach. It's the Carson City Connect. That's the name. That's on the website. So I'll point that out to anybody listening too. There is Carson City Connect on the main page. There's a button on the main page of the city website that goes to frequently asked questions in departments, and that's a way to submit various types, any type of requests to the city or code enforcement complaints or building department questions. There's also when you have questions there, we're getting surveys through that as well. We haven't had any surveys through that for the building department, but we have for code enforcement and others through that system. So those are the methods that we're evaluating the measurements.
I understand that. But it is, getting feedback from the public is not something that you get on a regular basis. I mean, in our previous questions or your answer to me, we've received 5 written surveys about the building department. So we're not getting a lot of responses from the public, although the building is doing great. I'm not saying that. But is there any way we could have feedback from the public in a different format or get more feedback, or can we have a third party do this? Something to think about in the future. I'm not asking for it today or tomorrow.
Yeah, this is not unique to Carson City. Other municipalities, how they do it is when a permit holder or an applicant comes in and gets a permit, when they receive a final, they send them a survey card, and then basically if you do that over a period of time, your percentages, you'll probably get 2 or 3% back of unsolicited, either one way or another. Those are good indicators. We've talked about that among our Charles Abbott staff about implementing that prior or after the summer portion, but that would be another way of providing that information.
Okay. On page 93, under the heading number 3, term, and I think you've answered it, but if you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit, Lee, I'd appreciate it on that question I sent you.
Okay, so again, this section of the contract, this is the term of the contract. Charles Abbott is under contract until September 2nd of 2016. The contract, unless amended, unless Charles Abbott or the City Board of Supervisors has issues with this, it is written to extend automatically at the end of that period for another annual period, unless either party provides notice within 90 days prior to that extension that something needs to be looked at in the contract.
And then on page 101, I was asking about the monthly percentage fees, what that totals, and then versus the 10% pay increase, I was trying to get the difference of how much they've collected in the past and how much they will collect in the future based upon this contract of 10% pay raise.
Okay, yeah, so a little bit of background too for what that is. In the contract, you reference on page 101, that's the original contract compensation to Charles Abbott, which is they get paid a percentage of the building permit fees that come in. So initially, there was that table. There was a 10% increase, and I think it was December of 2014 is what I've researched and found that it was increased by, all those percentages were increased by 10%. So the current table is actually on page 109. It was an amendment to the contract. And it was increased because they added a full-time employee. There was a Carson City employee that was a building permit tech at the permit counter that left for another job, and at that time, so Charles Abbott has filled that position with a full-time position, so that compensation went up by the 10%. So I think to get to your real root of the question is kind of this evaluation of how much we've paid and what's the value, the return to the city. You know, just to put the numbers out there, in the calendar year 2015, we collected a little over $604,000 in permit fees, of which a little over $408,000 go to Charles Abbott to pay them and their employees. What I don't have is a complete fiscal year analysis of a complete city budget year, because going from July to June, because they started in September, so that first year was when we had some on the city and some not, so there wasn't a really clear evaluation, and we're not through this fiscal year yet to have a complete year of budget analysis of how we're doing. However, I did look at some numbers for half of this fiscal year, so for July through December. In terms of what we're budgeted, the building permit revenues are at about 75%. So we're 50% through the year, but the revenues are about 75% of what we're projected. So we're doing well on revenues. The budget is it's more complicated than just Charles Abbott and the building permits, because there's more in the building department budget than just building permit fees and the Charles Abbott contract. But we're at about halfway. We're right on target for the expenses in the budget and ahead in revenues. So we think we're doing good. At the end of June, we'll have a complete picture of how we've done in the fiscal year budget. So that was probably, it was a little bit more than you asked, but I think kind of where you're going with it.
I appreciate it. So basically, in 2015, we allocated $408,000 for Abbott, correct? Right? And how many staff members do we have for 2015?
Do they have in the building department? So they have 3 full-time employees that are in the building department. I probably should have noted that sooner. So that Charles Abbott provides the building official, an inspector, at least one inspector. And they have a backup person for that, and a counter tech, so there's a person at the counter every time somebody walks in during business hours. They also now have backup for all 3 of those positions. Ray is the backup building official, and he comes in if Sean's out. They have a backup inspector in Van that comes in and fills in, and they now recently just hired another employee, Charlene, that has worked in Douglas County and Washoe County in the past, that is backup at the counter. So now they have coverage, even in situations where somebody's out, they have complete coverage in those positions.
Any other questions from the board? Sean, just to, kind of on topic, but a little bit off maybe. The question I have is, when is a building permit required? For example, you see, at some of the hardware stores, sale of buildings, prefab sheds. To install one of those, is a building permit required?
Mr. Mayor, there's two issues with that. First is the exemption from permitting. It's publicized in Section 105 of the Carson City Municipal Code. It's also in the building code. It's a flyer, handout that we often give out to people. What both the residential code and the building code specifies, if you have a shed 120 square feet or less, you can put it on your property without a permit. However, that's a single-story utility shed for that use. When you energize it, you put electricity to it, or you try to go 2 stories or different dynamics, then a permit would be required. The second portion of that is what you're talking about are portable buildings. Portable buildings, we're currently working with the state about some clarification through state statute about portable buildings, but currently they fall under the building code. So when somebody comes in with a portable building, we're looking at the foundation support or the support ties to hold it to the ground. If it's designed to be surface laid and used that way, we would take a professional design's estimate in that portion of it. But to answer your question, yes, a building permit currently is required. However, there are talks with the State Department of Manufactured Housing about coming up with more regulations for these portable buildings. Did I answer your?
I don't know if I'm more confused than I was from the beginning, but I mean,
let me try to simplify it how I do a lot of times. If you have a 120 square foot shed, which is a 10 by 12, 8 by 13, whatever that combination might be, that would be exempt from putting it on your property being a building permit. However, if it's altered, or if it's meaning that it gets electricity ran to it or something of that regards, then yes, we do require a building permit to certify the installation of that electrical requirements. And that's both for residential and commercial, but it's strictly for utility. It's not for office space. It's not for cashier's station. It's for a utility storage purpose only.
Okay, and then suppose somebody wants to put shelving in their garage and close the shelving with, doors, you know, kind of a cabinet where you open the doors and they got the shelves inside. And they want to put an electrical outlet in, and they hire an electrical contractor to come in and move an electrical outlet in there. Is a permit required for that?
By the code, yes. And what we've started talking with local contractors, electrical contractors, specifically on the customer service aspect of what you just described. A lot of owners feel, you know, it's cost prohibitive for me to get a building permit to do this, to do that. So we're trying to look at different avenues for more options to give people in that regards. But by the code, yes, a building permit would be required. And the reason behind that, there's other issues that would trigger when that building permit comes in. For example, the code now requires carbon monoxide alarms to be put in houses when building permits are actually issued. Normal owners would frown on have to do that upgrade. It's a fire and life safety issue to put a CO alarm in there. So we use some discretion with that. And when I talk about discretion, that is a licensed individual that needs a permit to do that modification. However, the shelves are completely exempt from the permits. In shelving, when you're talking about going higher than 8 feet in commercial, we look at seismic certification because we are in a high seismic area. So we call that racking and shelving, and we require a permit for that.
Okay. And just one last question. Jim's got another question here, but
Just only because the mayor kind of sparked me to ask this question. On a building permit, when it is issued and it is good for a certain length of time, when that time period comes up, is it automatically renewed, and how many times can it be renewed?
The code actually specifies 2 things that actually deal with that situation. First, the work has to continue and not be abandoned for no less than 180 days. So if it goes for 180 days and no work has been conducted, that permit would expire by sure being abandoned of the work. However, we did this last year. We modified the permits where we allowed the applicant of a permit to come in and ask for an 18-month extension. So we do provide that to them. We want something in writing so that we know in the file that this permit's been extended by who. But these extensions only apply on regular building permits. Over-the-counter permits, like for furnaces, water heaters, small stuff like that, they expire at 180 days.
How many times may they have an extension or be granted an extension?
By municipal code, those permits there can get actually 2 times that I can approve for an extension up to 18 months each for twice. The 3rd time, they would have to appear in front of this board to get the 3rd extension.
And then any time after that, they'd always have to come back to the board for every extension, or just the 3rd time?
The 3rd time, and we would have to clarify.
Anytime after that, too.
Yeah.
Cindy would.
Yeah. Anytime after that.
Thank you.
Sean, I asked you this, but just for the record so folks know, if someone's doing a 200 square foot addition in an urban interface area on their house, what's required fire code wise in terms of sprinkling or whatever? Could you just define that?
I'm going to go out of my path a little bit here, talk about some of the fire issues, but I'm going to talk mostly about the building. The Wildland Urban Interface Code, which we adopted, pertains to the outer regions of Carson City. When somebody comes in and through the permitting process, they decide they want to put in an addition or a structure out on there, they have to comply with the entire Wildland Urban Interface Code, but more specifically from the building portion of it, they have to use fire-resistant construction methods. They don't get the luxury of using combustible materials for the outside of the structure itself. It does cause some confusion with people who are used to using lap siding or combustible materials for the last 30 years, and then all of a sudden now they have to use fire-resistant practices. The second portion, and I'm going to speak a little bit for the fire district, is the WUI code has specifications about water source for fire. Usually, the case with hydrants being located out in the rural parts is a problem. If there's no hydrant there, then the applicant has to show water supply on the property or possibly moving forward with sprinkling that new created building. That's the portion of the WUI with the fire code. So it jumps from the WUI to the fire code portion of it.
And if they have a pond large enough, that could help suffice too?
Yes, actually, the water supply is not designated how that supply has to be there. It could be in a container, it could be in a tank, it can be a pond, and that's the way we look at it.
I just have one last question. And, I think I've probably asked this before, but if I have a professional engineer who can stamp plans, why isn't that professional, why isn't that stamp sufficient for the issuance of building permit without further review by any other engineer? I mean, because essentially what the building department has is their own engineer, who likewise has the ability to stamp a plan. And so,
That's a good question. On the architect or the engineering aspect for the stamp, I can't speak about that. They're their own regulating authority. They have to be executed in their own area of expertise. However, when we have designers, design professionals, when they submit applications, we're not looking at the design aspect. We're looking for minimum code standards. We're looking for code compliance so that they use the right design criteria, they use the right design elements, and they didn't miss something that sometimes designers have a habit of missing. So that's the reason why we don't over-design people's building. I'm not a professional designer. I am a code guy who understands how to look at a set of documents and understand the minimum standard of the code and did it meet or exceed that issue. So I don't regulate his design. I just certify that it's code compliant.
okay, thanks. All right. Aaron, did you want to weigh in on anything go back on topic here a little bit about the performance of Charles Abbott?
Thank you, Mr.
You don't have
Mayor.
to if you don't want to, but I think we'd all like to hear from you what your take is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, Supervisors. For the record, Aaron West with Nevada Builders Alliance. I would like to, thank, this body and staff, going back to September of 2014 when we were having the conversation about where do we go from here, and, the idea of a very innovative approach. And from our estimation, it's actually exceeded our expectations. And I mean, just very simply, I can tell you that in the entire calendar year of 2015, I did not receive one phone call in my office from a contractor who was upset that they felt, that they had been wronged by the building department. So,
well, that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good statement.
That's a testament right there, right?
Right, yeah.
No, I honestly, we talk on a regular basis. I would say Lee and Sean working together to make sure that we stay out ahead of things like, we were talking about the energy efficiency code, and we knew it was going to be, a little fun for folks to get their head around. But the idea of putting on workshops, getting the message out there, and really informing the public so that it's not that shock when that first time they show up. So we can't say enough about how well this is working, and in fact, we've used this model in Carson City as an example to other jurisdictions about how they could solve some of their problems.
Very good. Thanks, Sean, and thanks to your organization for being involved with it all. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Public comment on this issue? Anybody? Board, are we ready? This is no action on this one. Are we okay? All right. Sean and Lee, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 17. This is a report of expenditure of each fund in the Treasury. Anybody want to hear from Nancy on it, or are we okay with this? Everybody okay with it? Motion's in order.
I move to accept the report on the condition of each fund in the Treasury and the statements of receipts and expenditures through January 8th, 2016 per NRS 251.030 and NRS 354.290.
Motion and a And when we come back, the gavel will be passed to redevelopment chair, Supervisor Abowd. Yeah, I forgot about the augmentation. All right, we'll come back and do the augmentation.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
We need the 52 million.
Yeah. We'll take the augmentation. Yeah, it's fine. We'll take it. Yeah, I apologize. fairly big item. It's about budget augmentation. It's a big number item. All right, we're going to take up item 17B. This is a resolution regarding the augmentation of the fiscal 2015-2016 budget in the amount of $52,881,333. So it's a big number, but I think tell us what's going on here. All right.
All right. Good morning, Nancy Paulson, Chief Financial Officer for Carson City, and I have Sherry Russell with me, who's the Deputy Chief Financial Officer. And what we have up on the screen is the explanation of the augmentations, which gives the detail of the various accounts that we're adjusting. The augmentations consist of the carryover of restricted balances and unfinished projects from fiscal 15, the appropriation of grants, both current year awards and prior year grants that were unfinished at June 30th, current year board or IFC approved transfers from contingency, and the adjustment of beginning fund balances to actual amounts per the FY15 audited financial statements. So the first column I'm going to talk about is the fund balance column at the end. Let's see. So the fund balance column reflects appropriations of excess fund balance from FY15 in the amount of $2,358,638. What this is the difference between the actual ending fund balance at June 30th and what we had originally estimated. A little over a half of this amount, or 1.2 million, are amounts that are, they're balances that are subject to external legal restrictions such as NRS or grant agreements and other various donations. Some of the largest categories are $358,000 in court fees that are restricted by NRS, $234,000 in clinic and vaccine programs at the health department, $333,000 in animal services, and $120,000 in sheriff programs. So after taking out the restricted funds, we had $370,000 that the board approved. It was excess C-tax revenue from fiscal 15, and we have allocated that to the street maintenance fund for street repairs. And then that leaves us with a balance of $730,000 in unrestricted carryover. And at this point, we're adding that to the contingency account until we're sure that we won't need it for this fiscal year. What we generally use that for is capital or extraordinary maintenance, or to increase our fund balance going into the next year's budget. And then I'm going to just give a brief overview of some of the larger special revenue funds. For the most part, the smaller special revenue funds, we're just adjusting the beginning fund balance to actual and then adding those amounts to the current year budget. Let's see. The capital projects fund consists of carryover of prior year approved projects and Board of Supervisor or IFC approved transfers from the board designated account or the what we call the break fix account.
Excuse me, can we ask questions as we go?
Yeah.
Two quick questions on that. First one, no, I gotta read it back in here, sorry. On the board designated, the 219, and the theater improvements, could you just elaborate on that just a little bit?
So the board designated amount, there were amounts in that account in fiscal 15, and we're just carrying those over to the current year to add it to the, I think it was 227,000 that we had budgeted for break fix in fiscal 16. The theater improvements, according to the Parks and Rec Department, they are accumulating funds to add to the 1/8 sales tax funding to do improvements at the community center for the seating and the acoustics and the orchestra. So next, I'm going to talk about the Regional Transportation Fund. We're appropriating approximately $825,000 in federal and state grants that were awarded in the prior year, and also the city matching funds for those grants. The V&T Special Infrastructure Fund, the $72,000 that we're appropriating was a cash shortage at June 30th. There wasn't enough cash in the fund to transfer the entire amount to the debt service fund, and we're going to add that transfer to this current fiscal year.
Is that an ongoing problem, or is this just a one-time problem?
It's been a problem over the last few years when we had the decrease in the sales tax revenues, but I think as going forward, there's going to be enough cash reserves so that we won't have that problem in the future.
Okay, and then going back up one more, can you briefly give an explanation of Campco, the funds collected and where they're collected from?
So CAMPO is used to account for, I think it's almost all federal grants. Right? And there's a small match in there, about 16 to 20,000 from the RTC fund, and then Lyon County and Douglas County also give us a part of the match.
And where do those funds originate from? Is that DMV or something like that, or where are we collecting those funds from?
The FTA? Yeah, I'll let Patrick answer that.
Patrick Pittenger, Transportation Manager, Public Works. The Campo Fund is for the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. The financial director is correct. It's 95% federal, and it is a mixture of Federal Highway Administration funds and Federal Transit Administration funds. They're actually combined into one grant through an agreement with the state and the federal agencies. And then the 5% match is indeed provided on a prorated basis between the three-member agencies of Campo, Douglas, Lyon, and Carson City.
And where does Carson City collect those funds from?
Yes, the transfer, I believe it's less than $20,000. There's an annual transfer from the RTC to Campo for Carson City's portion of the 5% match.
Thank you.
Well, Nancy, on the V&T, and you might have to answer this later, I think we were carrying a fund requirement for them to repay us for debt they couldn't pay previously. Would you let us all know, is that they've caught everything up? The sales tax is finally coming in well enough to pay back the back debt on the V&T? Are we getting close?
Yeah, actually, for fiscal 16, the monthly revenues are coming in approximately $7,000 to $10,000 higher than what the monthly debt service transfer is. The money, the V&T Commission isn't giving us money. It comes from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and they're adding about $100,000 a year to that.
So we will recover all of the debt service. It's just catching it up. So,
right,
just for the
correct.
taxpayers' information, that just because debt isn't paid in the year, sometimes it's due, we still collect that debt when the money becomes available. So I just think it's important for everyone to understand we are collecting that debt.
Right, it's just the lag time of the cash coming in for those May and June don't come in until, I think, August and September. So it's just a cash shortage.
Not to labor it, but sorry. Going back to the Regional Transportation Fund, can you just briefly describe the federal grant projects? Where's that funding coming from? And professional services, where is that money coming from to pay that line item? And also the freeway landscaping maintenance, where that funding is coming from.
Let's see. So the various grant programs are to rebuild the multi-use path from Solomon down Highway 50, the upgrade of signal systems at various intersections in Carson City, and a linear path near the wastewater treatment plant. And then the professional services, that's just carryover from prior year. It comes from the 9-cent gas tax. And the freeway landscaping is the same.
That's from the gas tax?
Yes. That's the only, well, the biggest revenue that goes into that fund. quality of life. So the next one's the quality of life fund. We're appropriating approximately $3.6 million. This is the carryover of prior year projects and the appropriation of grants and undesignated balances. The largest amount in there by far is the carryover of the MAC project. And the street maintenance. So the next fund is the street maintenance fund, and in there you'll see the $370,000 that is coming in from the general fund for street repairs, and also carryover of street and sidewalk repair projects that weren't completed prior to June 30th. And also the carryover of the equipment budget. The purchases were approved in March of 2015, but the equipment was not received prior to June 30th, so we have to move the budget into this current fiscal year. The next fund is the infrastructure tax fund. The almost 13 million is the carryover of projects funded by the 1/8 cent sales tax bonds that were issued in fiscal 15. We also added the donations from CASI, the Nevada Humane Society, and also Animal Services had some donations that they put towards that project.
Nancy, on the MAC and Community Center, the $2 million here, that is basically, the majority of that is for the MAC, not the Community Center, correct?
Right, the $2,128,000 is for the MAC. Yeah, we have that labeled. We need to take the community center off. And then down below that, $25,000 has been budgeted for the community center improvements, just to start the design work, I believe. And then the grant fund, approximately $1.8 million is the carryover of prior year grants and the appropriation of current year grant awards. The 911 surcharge fund, $464,000 is the carryover of the Tiburon project, and there's $61,000 for fiber optic project, and the rest we've just allocated to undesignated projects. Debt service fund. The debt service fund is just accounting for the refunding bonds that were issued in August of 2015, the amount of $23 million.
Nancy, sorry, I'd like to back up one. I apologize. Can you, on the residential construction fund, can you briefly give a description of the theater improvement project for the $83,000, what that encompasses?
That relates to, I think, what we had just talked about in the Capital Projects Fund or Quality of Life. That is an additional amount of funds that they've been accumulating to help go towards the community center improvement project. Next is the ambulance fund. Based on our most recent actuarial evaluation, we're anticipating the reduction of the other post-employment benefits expense in fiscal 16. That's the health insurance for the retirees. And we are transferring that amount to the equipment line item for purchase of an ambulance chassis. And then the last part is I'm just going to put the stormwater, sewer, and water all together. Basically, those are just it's appropriation of capital projects that are being funded by the state revolving funds. And that was it.
I just wanted to make a general comment because we often don't thank organizations, and I just wanted to note on page 130 of the augmentation, the library gift account is getting an augmentation of $118,217. But anyway, I just want to, again, just publicly thank Friends of the Library like Cassie this morning. We have a lot of organizations out there that gather money all year long to support causes they believe in. And I just wanted to go on the record to it's kind of nice to see an augmentation coming from outside sources, and just wanted to give a shout out to that group for doing that. And I think I had another question. That's good enough for now.
Nancy, I know there's a lot of line items where we talked about the community theater and theater improvements. Could you give the board members an email how much money is actually, when you separate this for each line item, there is for the community center?
No problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board on the process here? Public comment, anybody? Motion's in order.
What's the resolution number?
2016 R1.
Oh, there you go, right? Okay. I move to adopt resolution number R 2016 R1, a resolution to augment and amend the Carson City fiscal year 2015-16 budget in the amount of $52,881,333.
Motion in a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Okay, now we're going to recess as the Board of Supervisors, and I'll turn the gavel over to the redevelopment chair.
I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Redevelopment Authority, and let the record reflect that we have a quorum. And first open it up to public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to item number 21A for possible action to adopt a resolution to augment and amend the Carson City Redevelopment Authority fiscal year 2015-16 budget in the amount of $689,674. Nancy?
Nancy Paulson, Chief Financial Officer. Basically, what we did with the redevelopment funds were any budget savings or excess revenues from fiscal year 15 were added to the undesignated account in the revolving fund. And then we also carried over the 3rd Street project that was approved in the prior year and added an $125,000 donation that was for the 3rd Street project.
Before I open this up to the board for questions, Nancy, can you elaborate on the overtime line item on the budget?
There's a Parks and Rec employee that is paid 100% out of the redevelopment fund, and they work in the downtown areas. And sometimes they incur overtime during special events like the Christmas tree lighting with the setup and the tear down of the staging, and they also do the Christmas tree decorations and that sort of thing.
Any other board members have questions? Seeing, Brad? Well, any other public comment? Seeing none, ready for a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 2016 RA-R1, a resolution to augment and amend the Carson City Redevelopment Authority fiscal year 2015-2016 budget in the amount of $689,674.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And now I will adjourn the Redevelopment Authority, and we'll reconvene as the Board of Supervisors, and I'll hand the gavel back to the mayor.
We're going to reconvene the Board of Supervisors, and we're going to take up Public Works, item number 25. This is an informational item only, information update on street maintenance. You guys need a minute to get set up? We'll stand at kind of ease.
Good morning, Mayor, Board of Supervisors, Darren Schultz, Public Works Director for the record. We're here to give a short presentation, just an informational item on street maintenance. This is general overview, high-level view of what funding we have and how it gets spent. Our transportation manager, Patrick Pittenger, is going to take us through this. Obviously, we'll take questions during and after, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much, Patrick Pittenger, Transportation Manager. Brief summary of what we're going to discuss today. The revenue of the RTC and streets funds, they're being presented together because while the revenues come in separately, they are both used to maintain the roads of Carson City. We're looking at the period of 2005 through fiscal year 2015, which just ended. We're also going to look at expenditures, past and forecast revenues, the condition of city pavements and those of our neighboring counties, and also a statement from the district attorney regarding the use of those funds.
Can we ask questions as we go, right, ma'am?
Please.
Okay. On page 161, when you said current condition of city payments and those of neighboring counties, these are, we're using the same type of indexing here in Carson City as we do in the neighboring communities to
Yes, that's correct.
establish that.
I was going to address that, but I'd be happy to say that yes, indeed, it's called the PCI Pavement Condition Index. We actually use the same software package called MicroPaver, and importantly, we all use the services of UNR's Pavement Management Engineering section for consistency purposes.
And then going back to the previous agenda item, Nancy brought up the fact that the landscaping, the freeway landscaping uses or funds from the gas tax. Could you elaborate on that a little bit from what was said in the previous agenda item?
Absolutely. Along the Carson City freeway, we have landscaping out there that we agreed to, NDOT would install it, but we agreed to maintain it. So that falls back on us, and that has to therefore be paid for out of streets, RTC. The primary funding source, as you know, for that is gas tax. So it's gas tax money that is paying to provide the landscaping.
Thank you.
Maintenance.
The next two slides both present the same information. It's where the revenues are. I'm actually just going to take us straight to the chart for expediency purposes here. What you have here are the sources of funds for RTC and streets combined. Just for your information, they're organized from smallest to largest by source, starting at the top of the pie. So the first piece of the pie at the top is interlocal agreements and other. The next one is grant reimbursements, all the way around the circle, going from smallest to largest, just for your information. The beginning account balance there, the slide previous said 7 million. The chart is correct. It was 9 million. This is just the amount of money that was actually in the accounts on July 1st of 2004, the beginning of this period, that was to be spent in the future. The bond proceeds, bonds are basically loans that were taken out by the RTC to help pay for significant projects such as the reconstruction of Curry Street, a portion of Roop Street, and the construction of North Stewart Street, which are paid back over time, which you'll see in the expenditure section in a moment. The sales tax, which appears as that large blue chunk in the lower right corner, that is a sales tax. It's a 1/4 cent sales tax that goes to the street fund. We were questioned if there was an expiration date for that. There is not. And then the largest chunk of that, which is approximately $53 million, is the total of the gas tax revenues that are received by RTC and streets. The total is a little over 15 cents. That's smaller than either the federal or the state shares. It has been constant since 1997, and there is not an expiration date for any of those gas taxes.
What do we yearly collect rather than from 2005 to 2015? What is it last year? What did we collect after gas tax?
I'm referring to a future chart that we'll get to, but the total was approximately $4.5 million from the gas tax. And with sales tax, it was the total between those two last year was just under $7 million.
So yearly, we collect about $7 million for road repair?
Yeah, it has varied, but you'll see that when we get further on in the slides.
Going back to the 1/4 inch sales tax,
going back to the quarter-inch sales tax, it has no expiration date, but can one be put in? Or does it just go on for eternity?
There currently isn't one. I think I'd have to work with the district attorney's office to see if there would be a mechanism to terminate that if that were the direction that were received.
Okay.
From time to time, there may be a restriction on actually pulling back funding, so we'd want to make sure there was no such restriction. We just would need to look at that.
Okay, then on the regular gas tax, or the 9 cents, that cannot be increased until it goes to a ballot initiative, is that correct? It stays as is?
Yes, there are no other funds of that type that can be raised without a ballot initiative, and indeed, there is a ballot initiative that will be coming before the public in November of this year.
And that can't be reduced either, can it? By any board member or by any department? It can't be reduced, can it?
I believe that theoretically it could be.
It can be, subject to some restrictions on if it's dedicated to servicing the debt on a bond or something along those lines. There are restrictions on that. But other than those restrictions, it can be reduced.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I'll just once again get to the pie chart, which is me. The same organization. The colors are the colors represent each piece of the pie. The smallest at the top, going around the circle once again, in order. As you can see on the lower end, we have some required things like street signs and paint. We were asked about the end year balance, which is the third smallest piece of the pie. 11 years ago, we had $9 million in the bank at the end of the year. At this time, we only had less than $2 million in the bank. The yellow piece of the pie there, the fourth smallest one, that shows a $1.9 million payment made to NDOT for the freeway. That was made in the first year of this analysis period. That was made in fiscal year 2005. In previous years, outside of this analysis period, there were additional payments made to NDOT from that 5-cent gas tax enacted by the Board of Supervisors. The total of those payments was $14.2 million. This is just one small part of that. And to also answer a question that was posed to us, there is a remaining balance owed to the Nevada Department of Transportation of $7.127 million that is payable upon the completion of the freeway with a grade separated interchange. That would be payable per the current agreement as amended through 3 cents of the 5-cent gas tax.
Can you go back to the NDOT payment for the freeway? Why that payment was made and what advantages or disadvantages that gain Carson City? Or
yes. I'll try to give you the short version is that the city entered an agreement with the Nevada Department of Transportation to make payments to the department to assist in and encourage the construction of the freeway, which is, I don't have to tell this body, is extremely important to the city of Carson City. Regarding the movement of vehicles, especially where they should be on a freeway and not on our city streets. And indeed, the department has continued to make progress on that. As I mentioned, we the city made $14.2 million in payments, and since then we've actually had payments reduced per amendments to that agreement, and the reductions were in trade for receiving streets from the state.
And has NDOT turned over to the city any streets within the community, such as Carson Street itself, or has there been any of that?
Yes, a little over 20 miles of arterial and collector roads that were previously owned by the state of Nevada were turned over to the city between 2007 and 2010. And I won't list all of them, but some major roadways which were transferred included Carson Street between Arrowhead and Fairview, Stewart Street, College Parkway, 5th Street, and others.
On page 165, the $51 million of the 45%, what is that annually? Do we have an idea of what that is rather than from the 10 years?
Yeah, you could divide it by 11, it'd be slightly less than $5 million. And certainly that has varied over the period. For example, when we constructed North Stewart Street, Curry Street reconstruction, Roop Street, and importantly, the Fairview Drive widening that was absolutely necessary given that the freeway ends at Fairview. Obviously, in those years, you had a higher than average expenditure. Just addressing the other pieces of pie, just so I don't miss them. I think I've got slides for these. So I'll just go through like this to make sure I don't miss any of these. Relatively little was spent on professional services. The street signs and paint. The primary cost of that is actually the long line striping conducted by contractors. We now break that out as a separate line item. Just for your information, the last few years it's averaged about $120,000 a year for the long line striping alone, performed by an outside contractor.
So, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
So out of that 1.3 million, most of it, or $1 million, goes to signs and paint installed by city staff?
No, the opposite. It'd be more like $1 million approximately. I don't have the number in front of me, but more like $1 million has gone to long line striping by the contractors. That has actually increased over the period because, for example, prior to receiving those roads from NDOT, we didn't have to stripe Carson and Stewart and the like. So we've actually had an increased cost over this period to do that striping. So the majority of the funds are actually used on contractors, not on city staff work.
And so the signs and paint, that's generally the crew I see out painting the lines for the stop signs and the crossing.
That is correct.
But the lines striping down the middle of the streets are subcontracted out.
Yes, those are awarded to a contractor annually by the RTC.
Thank you.
Let's see, the last one on this page is the street signals and lights. We have over 50 signals that we maintain and operate, which is an expense. And importantly, the majority of the street lights, the actual lights that light up the corners at streets, majority of those are owned by NV Energy, and we pay a monthly energy bill for those lights, which does over time have a significant cost. Vehicle fuel maintenance.
Patrick,
yes,
just go back just a second.
Yes, sir.
So some of the street lights are owned by the city, some are owned by NV Energy. The ones owned by the city, we've replaced those lights and put in LEDs to conserve energy, correct? But the NV Energy lights, which we don't control, are still ambient lights, correct? Which have a higher energy cost.
Yes, I can't say that 100% of the city-owned lights are now LED, but yes, for the most part, for example, all the lights that are on Stewart Street, we made sure those were LED when we installed them, and all of the luminaires that are above traffic signals. There's a couple hundred of those are all LEDs as well. Moving on to vehicle fuel and maintenance. The streets crews operate numerous vehicles. The ones, as Supervisor Shirk mentioned, the ones that are out there putting in stop signs, painting crosswalks, filling potholes, things that are listed on this sheet. I was asked to look at, what are the main sources of cost, and the three main sources of cost were the line items in the reports for fuel, vehicle repair maintenance, and fleet management. I was also, there's a statement at the bottom that a lot of money hasn't been spent on vehicles. As was mentioned in a previous item, there was money budgeted in the previous fiscal year to acquire vehicles. It was carried over this year because in fiscal 16 is when the purchase actually happened. So that doesn't appear in this analysis. And then additionally, in this fiscal year, we had a budget for vehicles as well, and the RTC recently did approve that. So that did occur, but that has happened during the current fiscal year, not during this analysis period.
And Patrick, it says at the bottom, no significant vehicle acquisitions used or funds have been used, but what is significant? Is
Right,
that
yes,
one or-
I understand that is that's not a specific term. I think that we were just trying to confer that we have not For example, we haven't paid for a new fleet of vehicles. We have not paid for a new fleet of snowplows, or likely with this. As an example, the vehicles that RTC just approved, they approved the purchase of 4 vehicles. The vehicles that are being replaced are from 1995 through 2001. These are older vehicles, and frankly, we have not been acquiring vehicles in the manner that would have been most desirable. The next item of cost on the order of magnitude going larger is debt service bond payments. The debt service payments did increase during this analysis period because bonds were taken out to construct significant projects I mentioned previously and on this slide. Bonds were refunded with our finance department to reduce costs. However, the current bond payments, which are right now $1.7 million a year, will be that until 2028. And I was asked what the decrease will be after that. After that decrease, there will be 2 years where the payments will be about $650,000, and then all of our bonds will be paid off, all the current bonds. Internal service charges and supplies. Each fund of the city pays these types of fees. An internal service charge would goes to pay for many important supportive functions of the city, like human resources, district attorney, and the like. And then we also have utility costs, insurance fund. And I was asked the question before this meeting of how much of that 14.4 million is associated with that first bullet point, the internal service charges. And the answer is approximately $8.5 million, or 59% of that top figure of 14.4 million. Next, we have the next largest source of cost is salaries and wages at $20.1 million during this period. This is primarily streets division employees. The people that are out there doing good work every day. It has varied during this time period, but typically 20 to 25 employees. And they are doing street maintenance. They are doing the crack filling, the pothole patching, street sweeper operations, snow plows, signal maintenance. We have crews that do that. The installation of stop signs. We have a concrete crew that goes out there and does important work on our sidewalks, and also maintenance of non-paved surfaces like shoulders. And then finally, the largest of the expenditures has actually been on street maintenance projects. Now, we did summarize this, and it does include a number of different categories. So, for example, it does include the what has been an annual slurry seal and micropaving contract, which has been done through contractors. And I was asked for a little more detail on this. It has been done every year during this analysis period, except in 2012. There was not a contract awarded due to lack of funding. The 2010 project, actually, the city was not going to do them, but we did get a little bit of stimulus funding, so we did that project. While I don't have an exact number in front of me, that given the average of what we spend in a year, approximately $10 million of that $51 million was spent on contractors to complete slurry and micropaving projects. This also includes those significant projects I mentioned previously, and in addition to Fairview Drive, but you can also look at traffic signal improvements. The intersection of Carson and Clearview was improved, and many others. We did a significant overlay of Solomon Road, and also we did complete numerous grant-funded sidewalk and bicycle projects. And just for clarity, so that we were consistent with the audited figures that were provided to us for this analysis, we did list, for example, if we built a sidewalk project that was 95% federal funded, we did list the cost of building that in the cost of building the project, but we also listed the reimbursement that we received in the revenues as well, so that we made sure that we were consistent with the numbers provided. But truly, the net cost to the city was far less than the total cost that we awarded to the contractor. That's about it for that. Okay, now moving on. The pavement condition of index of Carson City. This is, I'm going to refer to it as the PCI, and just for clarity, this is an average pavement condition of the city. So the level of pavement condition varies throughout the different roads of the city. We have over 270 miles of roads. So the average for the whole city is 63.5 on a scale of 0 to 100. okay? And it falls in a category listed as fair in the same system we discussed previously that we use and UNR uses and Washoe County uses. Someone asked the question of if you have all these different pavements and how do you figure out, which ones to spend your money on? And that is a very, it's a very intense process with a lot of different things you have to think about. But just some of the factors we take into consideration are the funding that's available, the type of funding available, which may dictate what we do. We do take public input. We have this pavement management system that's very helpful, and we're just completing a second generation of that. We look at the classification of the roadway, the traffic volume on the roadway, and also coordination with land use, economic development, and also coordination with utilities and other partners such as NDOT. For example, the Fairview Drive project was certainly driven by the fact that NDOT was going to terminate a freeway there. Moving on to the next bullet, if the funding situation not changed, there's going to be a graph for this. We do expect a decline in the condition of the roadways overall, even with the existing funding sources that we have. I was asked what was this number 12 years ago or 14 years ago. We didn't have this type of data and these numbers that we do now back then, but I can tell you that several years ago we had a similar type of index we brought before this board in December of 2012, and at that time it was in the upper 60s. And while it was a slightly different scale, it is a reasonable approximation of the decline that we've experienced. Then we indicated here that we expect the decline to continue. The question was asked, well, when do we figure out that we didn't have enough money? There was no exact moment, but I can say that staff and the RTC have been increasing the awareness of this issue for over 5 years now. We looked to build a pavement management system in 2010. And we've been in front of this board and the RTC on several occasions since regarding this.
In the determination, you brought up the determination of how streets are repaired, and you take public input and so forth. So is this an internal determination by staff which street to repair, or is it discussed at RTC? At what length would the public know that their street is up for repair to come before the RTC, or is it done internally within the department to decide what street to repair?
Well, the Public Works Department, does a lot of work to try to figure out the most efficient, effective methods to use to expend the funds under Darren and Nick's leadership, of course. But yes, we do come to the RTC and talk to the RTC about plans for the coming year and upcoming projects, and then of course eventually when there is if there's a contract awarded, obviously RTC awards the contract as well. So we do inform the RTC, and we also do the work internally. As far as the actual notification of the public, we have the public meetings, of course, that I just referred to, but then there are, and Darren probably knows this better than me, but the actual methods that are in place to inform entities. If we're going to rebuild a road and it's going to impact somebody's access to their property, obviously we have methods in place to communicate with the adjoining property owners.
One caveat to that is if we're, street maintenance is also filling a pothole. So those type of maintenance activities and repairs, they don't go back and forth to the RTC. The things that go to the RTC are bigger project repairs where we're removing sections of street and putting in new. Those are considered big capital projects, and they would go through that process. But the regular maintenance of roads, from potholes to crack filling, that is an internal discussion. Where's the worst areas? What's highly used by traffic? Where's areas that are, the complaints are high? All of those factors are put in there. We have a big master spreadsheet of all these trouble areas, and then we pick them off as we have available staff and money.
Well, as you know, I'm sure a lot of board members get similar emails or phone calls about road conditions, vocal citizens. I think where I'm having some difficulty understanding is the repair of roads, of how internally staff would know which street to go to do the sealing or crack filling or the potholes. I understand it's complicated. There's a lot of roads. It's not easy to do, but I think there's got to be a system put in place that's somewhat easier to understand, because I see I'm not going to point out any particular project, but I just want to have a better defining method to have citizens come forward. A lot of people don't go on the internet. A lot of people don't go to the city website to voice their opinion. And I know it's difficult, but we need a better system, I think, in place to allow future sealing and potholes or something to that effect, if that's possible.
Well, we take citizens' input very, that means a lot to the decisions that we're making, and that's a part of it. But we can't, as soon as we take citizens' input and put it at the top of the list, then we're not truly maintaining our infrastructure as it. I mean, there's scientific data that goes into that decision as well. Both of how many people use the road, but also the actual condition of the road. And the pothole out in front of my house is always bigger than the one out in front of your house. I mean, that's a given. So that's why it's. I don't mean to make it sound like it's a complicated system, but we have to try and look at it very objectively, and we don't try and get involved with those somewhat sometimes petty disagreements as to which street is worse. I mean, we go out there, we analyze it and look at it that way and use that data to help make that decision. So we do take, a lot of public feedback, both from this board and also calling us directly. That is all logged and in our database in terms of complaints and areas that we need to look at. But unfortunately, it's a very set amount of funds that we have to do a big bunch of repairs, and so we have the system in place in terms of trying to set a priority. So, but people that can come and visit with us, and we will specifically sit down and tell them, this is what we're working on, this is where you kind of fit in your complaint, in your category, and when we hope to get to that particular thing. And of course, unless it's an immediate fix where it's a safety concern that has to be done right away, then it goes right to the top of the list, obviously.
Is there any way to separate the funds that have been spent on road repair, or in the future, could we do this by ward to see how much tax dollars are being spent in each ward?
In terms of could we give you a list or break that out by ward and say, over the last 10 years we spent this much in this ward, and is that what you're looking at?
I'm not going back 10 years. I'm just saying maybe a year, or maybe as we go forward. Maybe
yeah, we could. I think we'd have to be careful we don't look at that on a too close of an increment, a year or 2 years at a time. I would want to look at that over perhaps a decade, but because we work in different wards. So yeah, I don't think it's a problem to do an analysis as to what was spent there. I would probably shy away from trying to say, hey, we want to spend specifically this much in this ward, and specifically because that defeats the whole purpose of using this this data and how we're repairing. But as far as doing an analysis as to what where the money's been spent, that's something we could put together over.
Patrick, can you just very briefly go over the rotation system for the micropaving and slurry sealing during this period? Because I think that will also help answer part of this.
Yes, certainly so. Yes, the primary method that was employed during this period, it was a rotating basis. The city was divided into 8 geographic areas. They were not ward related, but they were based on trying to make them equal areas for funding purposes and make it logical for the work to get done. And so that a contract could be awarded each year of relatively equal amounts. And it was basically, like I said, approximately $1 million a year. And we would do slurry sealing on the residential roadways. And if it's on an arterial collector, we would try to do micropaving, which is a slightly more expensive product, but it's justified because it sets up faster and because it holds up better with the higher levels of traffic. So we did rotate through each of the areas of the city during this over an 11-year period. Even though we missed a couple of years during this period, we did get through the entire city. And importantly, we're now moving away from that because not because it wasn't a good thing to do, but because working with the pavement management engineers, we've determined that the continuation of that program in that method is not the wisest use of the money going forward, not anymore, because the conditions have deteriorated to the point where it's not reasonable to expect you're going to extend the life of the pavement with that improvement.
Patrick, you were looking to, I think it was last year, you were working with UNR and the engineering department and to determine what product or what might help make the dollars go further. Have you come to any conclusion on that?
Yes, and if you don't mind, I'll use this to help illustrate that. We have been working with UNR since we spoke, and they've gotten to the point now that we collected automated data. This is not a person going out and saying this road looks good or bad. It's actually a vehicle that drives around and collects automated data that is objective and you can repeat it. We did that in 2011 and 2015. So now UNR has the benefit of 2 sets of data to see the deterioration as it goes. And they have now built a lot of what's coming in the presentation is from them, including this map of what condition we're in now. And frankly, we're only a few weeks away from having that product that will tell us, what should we be pursuing. We have used, for example, we went and did part of Little Lane. We actually did have some input from them on that. But really, the last piece of the puzzle that they're working on is, what are our true needs for what we should be spending, and indeed, what would be the places to go. The thing that's daunting is that that we already know that the needs so far exceed our available resources, that even when we're working with them, they say, here are, I'm not saying it's exactly 10, here are 10 places you should really go now. We just don't have the resources to go to those 10 places, and we have to work with them to figure out what's the place to go. I'm sorry I don't have it available today, but they've actually, I've seen a preview of this map forecast out over the next 10 years. And I hope to be able to share that in the near future. But you can actually see that even with the existing funding sources, more and more red roads every single year as you go forward in time. Just so you know, there's seven categories on here, good through failed. Each one of them is 15 points except for failed, which is only 10. So 0 to 10 is failed, 10 to 25 is serious, and then all the way up to scale, just for knowledge.
Is there on the
yes, sir.
website anywhere a better, rather than just this picture, where you could actually see the street names of each?
Not at the moment, but we're happy to do so. Yeah, just a matter of getting it out there. Yes, admittedly, those of us that look at this every day, we can tell everybody what every street is. But admittedly, we'll be happy to share it. But anyway, this does illustrate the difference in streets throughout the city, and we know that Gonai Road isn't good. We know that Lampa Road isn't good, and Curry Street and Sierra Vista Lane, which we're working to address through a different grant. But it's good information to have. This is not a Carson City problem. Unfortunately, this problem exists elsewhere as well. The current pavement condition index overall, as we indicated, is 63.5 for Carson City. It's higher in Washoe County. It's lower in Douglas County. And while those don't look like big differences in numbers, it costs a lot of money to get from one to the other because this is a big chunk of infrastructure. Among the 3 counties, frankly, I'll just talk off the graph. This will be better to work from. As you can see here, good pavements at the top, bad pavements at the bottom. Carson City, Douglas, and Washoe. If you look at Washoe County on the right, somebody asked for percentages. Over 50% of Washoe County pavements are in good or satisfactory conditions. That's about 38% for Carson City. As you can see, Douglas County unfortunately has the most pavements at poor or worse. Over 40% of Douglas County pavements are over 40% poor or worse. And the point from the previous slide that I'll point out here is that there are substantial differences in the fuel taxes that have been levied by these 3 counties over this time period. At the beginning of the analysis period, Washoe County's gas tax rate was very similar to Carson City. It was only very slightly different. It's now significantly different because they've been the only county that's been indexing their fuel tax for a significant amount of time. Clark County just started, but Washoe County has reaped the benefits over a number of years now. Douglas County, on the other end of the spectrum, was until very recently one of the only counties in the state which never levied the 5-cent gas tax, which Carson City did back in 1997. Douglas County did just pass the 5-cent gas tax, but it has not been in effect during this period. So the point of this is that, bottom line, Washoe County's got the best roads. They have been taxing themselves and spending it on the roads. Douglas County is on the other end of the spectrum, and we are similar to most of the counties in Nevada.
Patrick, in the previous slide, we had failed streets show up. There were, I believe it was red. I'm not sure. But in this slide, we have no failed showing.
We don't. Yeah, I don't know that we have. I think they showed up as serious or something on the map. Douglas County truly has ones that are below 10 on a scale of 1 to 100.
Could you go back one slide?
I will certainly attempt to do so. Probably this map is what you're looking at, right? Is this the one you're referring to?
The red is serious.
Yeah, the red is serious.
So we have no failed, correct?
Yeah, we don't have anything that's below 10.
Okay.
That
That's all
doesn't
I
mean
wanted
they're
to clarify.
good. But
That's what I wanted to clarify.
yes.
I got confused.
Whereas
Thank you.
Douglas County actually does have 2.5% of the roads are 10 or below. Okay. And this is also a product of the work with UNR Pavement Management Engineering, looking at our current condition here, fiscal year 16, and they can project with existing revenues what the average, and of course this is average, condition of our roadways will be over the next 15 years. So with the current money, if we follow the program that we're going to be getting from them, we will still have a decline in pavement condition, and it is a significant decline of about 25 points. This, Supervisor Shirk, this actually refers back to what you mentioned previously. The left half, approximately, of this graph shows historic, and the right half shows forecast. So as you can see in this graph, the green shows the gas tax, RTC and streets combined. The blue shows the sales tax. Both have varied over time. The peak for us for revenue was 2006, 2007. We had a significant drop off in both the sales tax and the gas tax. So while there has been a slight increase in the last several years, fiscal year 15, last one we have data for, actually had less revenue than we had in 2005 through 8. And remember that the number of roads that we have to maintain increased significantly, both in mileage and size and cost, about 5 to 8 years ago. Going to the right, that forecast there, that is actually not our forecast, because the ballot issue is actually going to be in 16 counties, everybody but Washoe. The DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, Nevada Department of Transportation, and NACO, Nevada Association of Counties, has gotten together and done these forecasts for all the counties for which this applies. These are not our forecasts, these are theirs. They forecast a 1% increase in the baseline. You can see that very slow increase in that green line on the bottom. So we use their forecast. And then the red is their forecast of the additional revenue that would be received by the city should the gas tax indexing ballot measure pass.
That's for the entire state or for Carson?
Just Carson City.
Just Carson.
Every county has its own forecast.
This goes back to the survey Campco did about the gas indexing. I'm just relating the two. We didn't post the results of that survey because we didn't want to sway the voters per se, but now we're posting how much we're going to collect in revenue when we couldn't post the answers to the survey questions the city paid for. So I'm a little confused why this is up here and we didn't post the survey question results.
Well, go ahead.
Noted.
I mean, but this, But just to be clear, this is not our data. This is from NACO, and each county has this information available to them as public information. Next two slides, I'm gonna turn it over to the district attorney to address these two.
And I don't have much to add to the letter that's in your packet. The operative provision from my perspective as far as concerns that have been raised in regard to the fuel tax, the operative provision is section 11.20.050 of Carson City Municipal Code. We exhaustively or attempted to exhaustively look at the provisions of that ordinance as well as its development over time. I would indicate that not just I did that personally, but a deputy district attorney in the prior administration had looked at that. And certainly when the 2004 amendment to the code provision, which has been the one that has been raised as far as having concerns about it, whoever drafted that or presented that to the board and from the district attorney's office would have considered the legality of that. And we've all come to the same conclusion, that we're satisfied that there is a statutory basis for both the imposition of the tax, in particular the 5-cent portion of the 9 cents that are the concerns have been raised about, and there is a statutory basis for the manner in which the board has expressed its intention as far as the expenditure of those funds. The reason why a statutory basis is important is because of the existence and the application of Dillon's rule in the state of Nevada. That was slightly modified by the 2015 legislature, but certainly for purposes of the 2004 amendment, Dillon's rule was fully in effect. So basically, what we were looking for was Carson City needs to have an express statutory basis from the Nevada legislature in order to impose, first of all, to impose the tax and to spend it in the way that it wants to spend it. I would indicate that in regard to the imposition of the tax, the reliance appropriately was on NRS 373.030, which provides in any county for all or part of which a streets and highways plan has been adopted as part of the master plan by the county or the regional planning commission pursuant to NRS 278.150, the board may, by ordinance, impose a tax on motor vehicle fuel sold in the county in an amount not to exceed 9 cents per gallon. So that 5-cent tax was within that 9-cent limit. The other condition precedent that you have a master plan with the streets and highway plan had been adopted, so all the conditions precedent had been established in 2004 when this board enacted that or not, didn't enact, it addressed that 5-cent tax and removed what had previously been put in place as a sunset on that 5-cent tax. There have been amendments to NRS 373.030 since 2004. Those amendments don't have any impact on the analysis or the legality of the relevant ordinance. In addition to that, there is, in my office's opinion, a clear statutory authorization for the expenditure of the funds that is provided in CCMC 11.20.050. That statutory authorization is set forth in Carson City Charter, section 6.010, subsection 10, which indicates that, which authorizes the Board of Supervisors to equip, operate, and maintain, convert to, or authorize, quote, street projects, end quote. And that is obviously a legal term, street projects. It is defined further in NRS 373 at 373.028 subsection 2. And it's very broad in terms of what it applies to. Basically, a project in a county whose population is less than 100,000, street and highway construction, maintenance or repair, or any combination thereof, including without limitation the acquisition, maintenance, repair, and improvement of any street, avenue, boulevard, alley, highway, or other public right-of-way used for vehicular traffic. So in a sense, it's very, very broad. If the money is being expended in furtherance of vehicular traffic for a street project related to vehicular traffic, it is a street project and authorized by the Carson City Charter.
So, let me understand this. Are you saying that since 2004, the authorization of expenditures that was used by the RTC and/or this board, but primarily the RTC, has been legal or illegal?
It has been legal.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Have you been provided with any evidence that would tell you differently?
No.
How many dollars of gas tax money has gone to the general fund?
Zero.
How much money has gone from the general fund to the gas tax, to the RTC?
Yeah, exactly. 370,000 during this fiscal year was directed by the board, but prior to that, we have not, the city has not expended general fund money on roads.
Would it be correct or incorrect to say that gas tax funds cannot be used for general fund purposes?
Correct.
And I'll go on record and concur with that.
So if somebody tells me that I've been taking money from the gas tax and putting it in a general fund, that would be a violation of the law?
Yes.
You're comfortable we have not done that?
Yes.
Okay.
Question.
Go.
So the statute that I just heard you read said in the furtherance of vehicular traffic. So does that include bicycle path? And the maintenance that I heard earlier that was discussed? Or are we only using grant dollars for bicycle paths and landscape? I just as a clarification.
Right, and just for the record, the statute is 373.028 subsection 2. I did not read the entire statute. It's very long. I focused on vehicular traffic. It does include, including a sidewalk, primarily for use by pedestrians, and also including without limitation, a long list of things. So it's not, I thank you for the clarification, because it's not restricted necessarily to vehicular traffic. The reason I focused on vehicular traffic is because CCMC 11.20.050 includes this statement. Through this paragraph, which is the paragraph that imposes the 5-cent tax, the Board of Supervisors expresses its intent that the revenue generated by the tax imposed by this paragraph be used for the design and construction of the Carson City Freeway or any arterial, collector roadway, or alternative route related to the movement of traffic through Carson City.
Okay. Other comments from the board? All right. Oh, you got one more? Okay.
This is it, the last slide. This is summary information. Pavements are deteriorating. We have a structural funding issue. It's not an issue just facing Carson City. Unfortunately, others have it as well. We're working to maximize use of our funds, using pavement management system, modifying from our previous maintenance practices. They will continue to deteriorate if we don't have additional funds to do so. There's not a legal issue. And the only thing I'm going to add is that as I shared with Darren this morning, I looked back to previous PowerPoint presentations and, pulled out one from 2012 that I provided to both the RTC and the Board of Supervisors at regular meetings. And the tone of what I said over 3 years ago was the exact same thing. Deterioration will continue. It will accelerate. It will not be consistent. Some roads will be worse than others. And and just want to point that out, that this is not a new issue. It's been a developing issue over some time. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to public comment now. Go, come on. Morning, folks.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul McGrath. I live in south end of town. I've been a resident for 50-some years, and I've got a concern about the way actually the city spends their money with respect to repairs of roads and things of this nature. And in the illustrations that have been brought forward, I'd like to ask Patrick to go back and to talk about the payments that are being provided to the Board of Transportation, or the NDOT, that stopped in 2005. So could you sort of go back to that?
Yes, with your permission, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so to summarize, the city entered an agreement with...
Well, let me first ask the question.
Yes. Yeah.
The question being, why did you stop payments to the...
Okay, very specifically. The payments were actually scheduled to have an agreed-upon hiatus wherein the payments would cease for only a limited period of time to allow the city to use those funds to build the Fairview Drive project. When the payments were going to resume, rather than resuming, the city entered actually two amendments, one in 2007, one in 2009, which both did similar things, and basically the amendments made it so that we were relieved from millions of dollars in payments to NDOT, and in return we received these roads from NDOT, and as I indicated previously, so we were relieved from payments, but not entirely from the payments, so we still owe over $7 million, but that was, by the amendment, delayed until after the completion of the freeway.
You are familiar with the bill authorizing the collection of that tax?
Well, yes, I believe the district attorney just...
We talked about it.
No, we're talking about in 1997. Now, this is duly passed, and the only reason it got passed is over all the objections of the citizens in this community was to have this money used for the freeway only. That was for your storm drains and everything else, and it had an expiration because you owed the city, or the city owed the state $19 million. And there was a lot of stipulation put in there to assure that the city would not do what you folks have done, is taking that money and use it for something other than the fact is that the roads that you talked about that you've done with this nickel gas tax is in violation of this law. And this is the Dillon rule, because you had to have permission from the voters to use this type of tax or from the legislature, which wasn't done.
Paul, the questions come up here. Would you respond, and I'll ask you to respond to that, Mr. Woodbury, Mr. District Attorney, to that allegation?
Right. So I guess I don't necessarily disagree, though, although that I haven't looked into it, as the relevant provisions of 11.20.050 were originally enacted in I think it was 1996, but it may very well be 1997. As they were originally enacted, they were much more restrictive in what the money could be spent on, and there was also a sunset clause. However, in 2004, pursuant to the provisions that I've cited here, this Board of Supervisors amended that. Now, they amended that by board action. They did not go to a vote of the people, and the reason that they didn't go to a vote of the people is that because NRS 373.030 doesn't require you to do that. It's expressly authorized that you can have a fuel tax up to 9 cents per gallon, and you can expend that for street projects. It doesn't have to be related to a particular freeway or anything like that. So what I've addressed is whether the 2004 amendment was legal in its inception, and whether since 2004 the money raised pursuant to that provision has been spent in a manner that is legally compliant. And the answer to those two questions are clearly yes. Now, if they, in theory, would have been in violation of the 1997 version of the ordinance. I haven't specifically looked at that because I don't really see that as the issue here.
Okay. Understand, Paul, what was just, by the way, why don't you introduce the council that's with you there?
I have brought Mr. Rick McCann with me to help me get through some of this stuff because
I've known Rick for a long time, so.
Okay, so that means then you trust him?
Well, I don't know about that.
You know, I'm a lawyer. But, you know, here's the deal, Paul. The district attorney represents the community here. I'm getting an opinion, we're getting an opinion from the district attorney that what you just said about legality of expenditures is incorrect, not right. And that the expenditures, you know, from the RTC, from an authorization standpoint, have been legal. And it concerns me a little bit that you say that they're still illegal. I mean, I got that you know, lawyers can disagree, but from our standpoint up here, I've got a district attorney, our lawyer, who's telling us that they are legal. So I just want you to take that into consideration, and you know, if there's something that Rick wants to add, that the DA may be wrong, I'd be happy to listen to that.
Well, you know, opinions are opinions, and our district attorney was elected to represent you folks to keep you out of trouble, and that's the reason that his opinion
Excuse me, the district attorney was elected to represent the entire community.
Right, but he's
not to keep us out of trouble.
Well, okay, right, to prevent you from getting into trouble, then how does that sound? A little better?
You and I both know, because you've been a sheriff of the county, and you and I both know, you know, and we've all been here, you and I have been about the same amount of time, probably. I can't remember who came first, but I think you're older.
We can ask your brother.
Yeah, yes, my brother. But, you know, the district attorney, you know, serves as board counsel, but they also represent the entire community.
Okay.
So, okay.
And
we both know that.
And I appreciate that. And, you know, as indicated, the tax limit had been reached with the agreement that was happened in 1997, the 9 cents, because it was obligated to pay for the construction of the freeway, and for phase one only. So now you had to exceed that limit, because you've got a 4-cent tax that you already imposed upon the people to do your construction work and do the road repairs, and then adding this other nickel to go out and get the freeway started, and that was a move that to get another 5 cents, and now you've maxed the credit card out. Now comes along in 2004 that you got all these type of road repairs you want to do, and you have no money to do it other than get into that 5-cent gas tax that's supposed to be repaying the state of Nevada. So what they should have done in 2004, instead of trying to jerry-rig the darn 5 cents, they should have gone to the voters and say, we need this money for this project, and I'm sure that you would have complete cooperation with the community to get these things done. But instead, you just take the money that was supposed to be used to pay off the highway department, and you just used it for whatever you felt like it. Am I correct, Patrick?
Hang on. Just the answer to, I think that the DA has just answered that question. I mean, what the board, not this board, but the board in 2004, I don't even know who was here in 2004, but that board made a decision about the expenditure of funds. Whether you or I agree with that is another question. But our district attorney has told us in no uncertain terms that what the board did in 2004, whether we agree or disagree with what they did, was legal. And that's the authorization that the RTC and this board has been using for expenditure of funds. And we may have differing opinions on whether they should have done that, but clearly, Paul, it is not illegal. And I hear that term being bandied around a lot, and you're sheriff, and you know, we all know what the illegal means. It's a criminal, it's an allegation of a crime. There's been no crime committed. It may be a political decision as to what happened in 2004, but it's not a crime.
Speaking of that meeting in 2004, this was one of those situations where this thing got rushed through right at Christmas time. It was agendized 2 different ways. on your agenda items that you sent out to the people to take a look at what's going on at the board. The first time they talked about diverting the tax and using for other purposes, and the second one comes up and it's agendized under some development services, and then it talks about diverting the tax as your second reading. Now, to me, that looks like something's going wrong, because if they don't agendize it properly the second time, they're trying to get away from the people coming and commenting on it. And if you'll note at that meeting, there was no public comment at all on this tax. And when you look at the tax from the original in 1997, you had a gentleman walk into the board meeting with the signatures of 2,500 people that wanted this thing to be put on a ballot. This tax to be put on the ballot to prevent people, and I'm talking about the Board of Supervisors, or RTC, from changing the rules on this tax use so they can't use it for other personal projects or city projects. And I'm going to ask Mr. McCann here to mimic a few comments that he feels that might be pertinent to this discussion.
So I want to know then, Rick, do you believe that the 2004 decision of the Board of Supervisors was legal or illegal?
I have not, Rick McCann for the record. Hi, Mayor. And good morning, Board. I have not established an opinion specifically with respect to legality or illegality. I will say that most assuredly I'm here to respect Mr. Woodbury's opinion. You asked him some very specific questions as a lawyer, as well as a mayor of this community. Did you review it? Are you comfortable? I knew where you were going with that, and he responded affirmatively. I reviewed it. I'm comfortable. That's your function, is to listen to him. I understand that. I respect that wholeheartedly. My concern, and to help articulate some thoughts that the sheriff brought to my attention, as my friend, because that's what I do. I'm the executive director of the Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers. I represent law enforcement all around the state. I have an office on Fairview here in Carson City as well. So in order to try to articulate my very KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, this is the way I see this, for you to be able to come to a conclusion. Number one, the city received money from the citizen tax. Yeah, you have been. Number two, the city was mandated at one time to use the money for specific purposes. That goes back to 1996 or 97. Number three, the funds were used, have been used, I think admittedly so, for reasons projects other than what was originally intended and designed. Now, it may have come from a change or a modification or amendment to your ordinance. I agree that that may have been the process. Nevertheless, as the sheriff has pointed out, as 2,500 signatures pointed out, and as signatures on a petition that I think that Mr. Morano has that he can throw up there for you, that is currently being circulated and signed by constituents of this community, they're not comfortable with the fact that that happened. It's not a legal or illegal commentary on my part. It's a matter of, why can't we see what's been going on? Why can't there be an audit shown? I think Mr. Shirk brought up a very valid point before. Why do we keep talking about revenue? We can't see all the expenditures. Mr. Woodbury made a comment, appropriate. He said, it's legal. But if it wasn't in compliance with the original intent of your constituents, shouldn't they have an opportunity to see what it's been spent on? Because one of the things that the petition, which again, if Mr. Morano can put it up there for us. Okay, or someone. Patrick, okay, thanks. Nick passed the buck to Patrick, huh? Okay.
You've had it all along, Patrick?
No, he just gave it to him.
I just gave it. Oh, okay.
And to comment on that while Patrick's doing the dirty work here, it's a one-page petition that has been circulated by individuals within the community. And as you'll see, it has a remedy associated to it. It says, hey, we're upset and this is what we want you to do. And one of the things they want to do is a simple audit of what other projects, not originally intended by this tax, has the money been spent on. That, I think, follows, perhaps not by your intent, sir, but I think it follows a little bit about what Mr. Shirk was saying. Can we see what's been spent and on what it has been spent? Because
I don't think there's any difficulty with audit. We get, you know, Rick, we get audited every year.
Sure.
And part of that audit is a determination of whether you've complied with the law. And we've had, ever since I've been mayor for the last 7 years, we've had clean audits. A couple different, minor things, minor changes, but they've been clean audits. And, you know, I got the political side of it, but I'd ask you then, you know, how far back should we go? I mean, maybe every bond question we have, well, there were some people that didn't like the bond in the first place, so maybe we should have done a different approach on a bond. I mean, I got it that you're upset, or that Paul's upset, or the group here is upset that the board vote didn't go the way they wanted it in 2004. I got that. But that happens all the time. I mean, if it didn't, we'd be a happy camper up here. But it happens all the time.
And respectfully, sir, I would agree with you that if you don't like it, okay, then take care of you people next time. That's what you're to serve them, and they're to go in there and pull a little lever that says yay or nay. I understand all that, and I respect that completely.
Yeah.
I'm a lobbyist up here. I don't get what I want. I never get what I want up here, nor in Vegas. Nevertheless, we understand the process politically. Well, maybe I'm just a bad politician, I don't know, or lobbyist. However, I think rather than getting into an idea, and you break up a good point, should we go back forever? Well, I think if the changes were made in 2005, Jason, 4, well, there's a starting point to simply provide an indication, a list, a chart, a pie, something to indicate what did you pay for that was not a part of the original intention. And the ladies and gentlemen sitting behind me and the many, apparently a couple thousand more that may be out there, may be appeased. And if they're not, well, then you won't be here next time. That's up to them. But the bottom line is that's not my concern. My concern is just trying to articulate a thought that maybe giving an audit of some sort, an internal, we're not talking about expenditures, an internal audit to show what things have been spent beyond the original intent, because we're not talking about people who are sitting here saying, raising a flag of, it's illegal, Jason. They're saying, that's not what we thought it was going to be. And you made some changes, and perhaps legally, but it still is your constituency who begs the question, what did you spend it on and why?
Help me understand where you draw the line between what's authorized, in your opinion, in 1997, and what's authorized, not authorized. Where would you draw the line?
I would not be able to specifically cite instances right now. I can perhaps research and do it. I'm going by the commentary that's been made so far that apparently there were changes, and there were things that were paid for that were outside of the original intent. I'm taking that on face value, sir.
If you could explain to me the purpose of having an audit to determine whether the funds have been spent per the original 1997 intent when we're using a baseline of 2004 when that intent was amended. To me, that makes no sense at all. It was amended. Like it or not, the intent was amended and the funds have been spent, according to our district attorney, per the amended intent. So even if we found that they were not expended per the original intent, it's irrelevant because that's no longer the intent. So what's the theory behind this, other than spending money to determine something that's irrelevant?
Well, certainly we don't want you to spend money on that. That's not what we're here for. I would suggest to you that there's two functions that this board, certainly all boards have. Number one is fiduciary responsibility, and you may very well have met that. I'm not quarreling with that. I can't quarrel with that. I have no facts to quarrel with that. Number two is transparency. Your people who've been up in this county, unlike Clark County, where I hail from for the last 35 years, you know, your neighbors move like you change your underwear. I mean, they're just a very transient environment. You people have some homegrown people here. I've come to learn that in my 35 years in Nevada. You got people here who have been a long time, your mayor included, most of you included perhaps. Certainly this guy, this old fetch sitting to my right here. Bottom line is they simply want to know from a transparent standpoint where the money has gone. And I don't think that's asking too much. And I don't think that's getting into the realm of, well, that's really not relevant. That's highly relevant. It's one of the two things you're here to do, transparency and fiscal and fiduciary responsibility, the latter of which you may have met, the former of which they're simply seeking.
So I guess my question would be, am I hearing you say that the numbers that were presented in the PowerPoint presentation today are inaccurate or not believable?
I don't know that they can be characterized as being inaccurate. I'm not here to suggest that. I think that they simply need to be explained more than a pie chart or more than a sentence. And that's what they're asking for. That's what the audit would do. The audit would simply say, hey, just for your knowledge, This is what we've paid since we made those changes, perhaps. And people will decide for themselves, because that's really what this is about. It's not indicting people. It's simply a matter of, hey, okay, this is what you spent it on. I'm not happy with that. And then they can decide what they want to do with this body.
I appreciate that. And I guess my final comment on that particular issue is that we make decisions twice a month that people don't like, every meeting. And so if we had to change our position based on the fact that 2,000 people came to us and said, we don't like your decision, it would bring our government here to a standstill. We're paid to make hard decisions, and every time we make a hard decision, we irritate people. We make them mad. They disagree with us. That's part of our job, and we have to just keep moving forward and understand that we have made the best decisions that we can based on the information that we've been provided. So the argument that if somebody brings me a petition with 100 signatures or 1,000 signatures, I appreciate that information, and I will look at that information along with all the other data that I get. But at the end of the day, I make a decision based on what's best for the long-term benefit of the community, and those 1,000 people may go away from that thinking I made the wrong decision. I can't help that.
And I fully respect that, sir, as a person who represents law enforcement around this state on collective bargaining, on officer-involved shootings in 3 in the morning, as someone who represents them on disciplinary matters, and unfortunately, for me, as a lobbyist up here on a frequent basis, I'm well aware that I can pack hundreds, if not 1,000 people into the building down the street. And it may not affect the gang of 63's opinion. I'm well aware of that. And I respect that. That's our system. And I respect our system. But when you say, I'll take it into consideration, but at the end of the day, I got to make a hard decision, for me, it's not a hard decision. Tell them what you spent it on. That's transparency. That's not a hard decision. That's what you're here for, respectfully.
So to clarify, when I want to look at first I want to say thank you for bringing the issue forward. I think that the public has absolutely every right to ask for redress from its board. So whether we agree or not, I do thank you all, because it is a citizen's right to come and ask for information and have redress. When I look at what you're asking for, so for an audit purpose, are you meaning you would like to see the 5 cents would have generated, just for round numbers, the 5 cents would have generated $3 million each year, and here is what we spent that $3 million on these roads? Is that what you're interested in seeing as a result, or you want it down to?
You know, the agreement that was provided with the Highway Department and the city in 1997 locked that money in to repay the loan of $19 million without any type of messing around with it with the city. And in fact, it was even brought up during the discussion that this is going to lock the city not to get any more money for 20 years.
Right.
Because of this action. And it was cautioned by, at that time, the RTC member, Greg Smith. And he said, this is really going to mess this thing up. If you guys want more money, you're going to have to find another way of doing it. And when they passed this, this was really put on by Shelley Aldine. She's the one that really pushed for this thing. And you could look in the conversation as in the minutes, you know, there was a lot of caution flags setting up. You know, this is a new tax. This is not an old tax. And then they finally, you know, convinced the mayor that, you know, they're going to vote for this thing, and his vote wasn't necessary because he was right at the end of his term. And this is an 8-year period from this time it went into effect until the time they made these changes. And then Marv Texera took over again. So, you know, Marv is the originator of this gas tax to get the freeway started. So when Marv come back, I mean, this thing has already got all screwed up with respect to keeping this thing on track. And the money, and again, the board was locked into the 9-cent tax that was the limit that they could use for road things. And this is the time, if they wanted to do that, this is a new tax because you've diverted the old the tax that was approved only for the freeway. This would be a new tax, so you would need to go back to the people and try to increase that limit through bonding issue or through an election or approval from the legislature.
So if I were to take part of your theory into consideration, and one thing that the mayor said is, we still have a $7.1 million obligation to DOT. And so I will indicate that I'm concerned that we haven't met that obligation, and the nickel has been used to fix roads that were needed. And we can agree or disagree on which roads should or should not have been fixed.
That's correct.
The reality is the money was used on roads. I don't think it's an issue to ask for a report or anything to say what roads did you work on in the last so many years. I think the public has a right to that knowledge, so I don't have an issue with that. But when would we have actually paid the tax all to the Department of Transportation? Would we not have been able to do their roads that they're even asking for? It would have taken us 5 years of the last, because really all of the money should have gone to DOT.
That's right.
Until the whole entire tax was paid. So my question is it kind of moot that you wouldn't have gotten what you were looking for anyway in roads because it would have gone to DOT?
That's correct, but this sets up, I expect now nothing's going to happen in the south part of town. I'm going to be dead before you get out there and fix the roads or fix the drainage problems, because just the way the government works. But I need to see a plan put in place where, and I think Mr. Shirk brought this up, a plan put in place so the people know in this community when and where you're going to fix their darn roads or fix their drainage problems, instead of just using it. And I'm going to go back to Patrick. When I contacted Patrick the first time, he says, I want to put you on a priority list. And you're not on a priority list because you've got a cul-de-sac and your roads are not going to be used as much. Now, that's not a way to govern. If you got a citizen who's got to complain about the roads and to tell you got to get on a priority list, that don't work for me. So, did that answer your question, Mrs. Bagwell?
Well, I think what I'm looking for all of the public is how you ascertain that. Do you know that your road is in worse condition than 3 roads over? That you know what priority the road, no matter what you want to say, we only have $1 million. Sure. I can only spread that $1 million, and I don't know, do you have a recommendation or a suggestion of a priority basis that helps us do something different than we're doing now to allocate that dollar?
I think it's mentioned in the petition. In other words, you set up a plan, and then you try to match your revenues to the plan for your road repairs. Now, you've all just recently have declared that this nickel is now a permanent tax. Okay, now the original intent of that was just to pay off the highway department, and then it was supposed to sunset, go away. And that was the only reason you got the tax in the first place. So, I don't know how else I can answer that question, but this is, the concern is that, nothing's going to happen unless somebody says something. And we're saying something through this petition. And that's another thing I'd like the board, to consider the petition. Quit fighting with Mr. Shirk, our representative, and have somebody else bring this forward to the board so we can get an action item out of it.
Paul and Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do have a system in place for evaluating our roads and for priority. And it's like an 8-year cycle, and there's the PCI index with the condition of the road, and that determines the priority of what gets repaired when. So everyone's road will eventually, they'll get to it, hopefully. But the fact of the matter is, right now, you're on an 8-year cycle of repair. And so the PCI index, categorizes and helps prioritize what they address. And then based on public safety needs, that's the other item that enters into that equation in terms of fixing the roads. So, Patrick, can you clarify?
Yes, ma'am. Well, first of all, the 8-year cycle, that's something we're actually moving away from now. That was something we were doing to work to maintain all the roads in the city. As I mentioned, we've been through all the different areas of the city with the slurry seal program, and as I mentioned previously, because the roads have deteriorated to the point that many of them have, it's not a worthwhile expenditure going forward to use that same method. Indeed, we have a pavement management system. We had the first generation, we're finishing the second generation, and that will provide us valuable input into, how to expend the money. But the bottom line is that with the amount of money that we have to spend, even if we do what we believe, with the data, with the information available to us, even if we do what is most efficient and effective with the money, frankly, we will fall further and further behind. So it's not a matter of, at the current funding level, we'll get to everybody at some point. Unfortunately, it will continue to decline. And indeed, safety, just so you know, is very important. One thing the RTC just did was to enter an agreement with a private entity to work together to build a traffic signal at a necessary place, and we're very confident that we did the right thing to move forward with that signal. But unfortunately, expending those funds to put into place an important traffic signal for safety purposes will reduce the amount of money available to us for pavement management.
And you're not purposely excluding folks, it's just a matter of money.
That is correct.
Okay.
I don't know how you want me to respond to that. I'm going to bring up the fact that during this testimony that you indicated that you had a lot of state acquisition, or you acquired a lot of state property, i.e. roads and things of this nature, and like downtown Carson City. So we can assume now that from Arrowhead Drive to the junction of 395, or junction of 50 going to Spooner Summit, that whole section now is Carson Street. Is this correct?
Currently, the portion of Carson Street from Arrowhead Drive to Fairview is owned by the city. The portion south of Fairview Drive is still owned by the Nevada Department of Transportation. Per the amended agreement, we are to accept that road in the future. When exactly that will happen is still being discussed.
Okay, so now you're picking up additional properties that's going to cost more money to maintain and do. And then what's going to happen now with the gas tax that's already currently being received by the city? You're going to be maintaining the 395 north with that tax? In other words, you've used the gas tax to acquire this property, the state roads.
The gas tax gets spent on maintenance of all the roads that the Carson City has. So our options are either we pay with dollars the debt owned to the state, or in some cases, we have traded roads from the state for those dollars, knowing fair well that that is now a maintenance liability that we are taking on. But we do an analysis to determine how much it takes to maintain those roads, how much millions of dollars we're supposed to pay to make that trade equitable. But both ways, we're paying money, yes.
Okay, now, correct me if I'm wrong. The money that you're receiving on this 5-cent gas tax, in order to reduce the amount that you owe the state, you pick up this additional property. Is this correct? Okay, now you use the nickel gas tax for that too, right? You've reduced the amount that you owe the state. It was $15 million, according by 2010. You owed $15 million on the loan that the state provided you, and now it's down to $7.5 million. Am I assuming this wrong, that you use that nickel that you owe the state to reduce this amount that you now owe the state from 15 to $7.5 million, or whatever the $1 million figure is?
I think that the question is, are we using cash to acquire these roads? And the answer is no. We're trading for a future obligation. So it's not a direct cash transfer using gas tax to acquire that road. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but we're saying that we will take over the maintenance of this road in the future in exchange for a reduction in the debt.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions unless you have some of me.
I wonder, is it your recommendation, Paul, that we cease collecting the 5 cents now and go to a vote of the people on how that 5 cents should be spent?
Mr. Mayor, I want the roads to be fixed. If this was what it takes for you to go to the vote of the people, that's fine. And I think that you would feel much better about it, knowing that, the voters wanted you to do what you're doing with the money, as opposed to just shifting the money around and trying to figure out what the hell pothole to fill, as opposed to, you've got the money and you set up a plan. You can say, here's what we're going to do. We've got the revenues coming in now. The voters have approved it, and you won't have that many complaints. I'll assure you that. But and one final, I do have a petition, and then I'd like you to agendize this petition, and that, you cooperate with Mr. Shirk and find somebody else in here who wants to put this on the agenda, and then act accordingly. You don't have to accept what we put in the agenda, but you can give a modified version or something else like that, but do it publicly. And I think everybody would be happy.
If I have collected 9 cents and spent $90 on a road, call it Stewart Street, how much of the $90 came from the 5 cents?
Well, that would be what, 1/5 of. Let's use 10 cents. You got 4 cents you already have approved by the voters. You got the 5 cents, so
How would I know, Paul, that it's not the 4 cents that I collected?
I wouldn't know.
Then that's the question that I'm asking Rick. How do you do an audit that would say, you used the money for the original purpose? Because it's like you drop an ink into a water jar. Mm-hmm. It just spreads out. Money's fungible in that sense. And so I don't know where the audit would go. I mean, it's pretty clear that what can be done is show what roads have been repaired or treated, or something has been done to a road since 2005 on. Actually, I guess since 1997 on. You could do that. You could show it by road, but I don't think you can do it by dollar. Because you don't know the dollar.
I would offer you, sir, your analysis is kind of like two guys leave Cleveland on the same day. One gets to Los Angeles on a Tuesday, one gets there on a Wednesday. How fast were they going? I understand there may not be a good answer to that process. However, I think you just hit upon it. I'm under the impression, Paul can disabuse me of this notion, I'm under the impression the transparency that I'm real big on is that they want to know where the money was spent. And there may not be a good indication that 4 cents, 3 cents, 5 cents, 9 cents, that may not be available to us.
And what you're saying, Rick, is that the presentation you saw about expenditure of funds is done in gross and not done by individual street.
It's a gross figure, which may not be inaccurate, but it doesn't represent the information that I'm told the
constituents want. Because you're looking to find out what street was repaired when, right?
In part.
And I'm selfish, too, because I think the southern part of the town needs to be fixed first.
Well, what's the other part, Rick? I mean,
well, in part, everybody's going to have their own interpretation of that data.
Right.
Some people will sit back and say, see, damn it, they didn't do what I told them to do. Well, the law has changed. The ordinance has changed, and it may have been changed legally. But some people just want to find out, I think a comment was made earlier, tell me maybe by district or otherwise, who's getting the priority here? When Patrick says you're not on the priority, all right, that may be correct. So what's the priority? What's it based upon? And as the sheriff just indicated, well, I'm selfish. I want the southern end done first. You're going to create a lot of dialogue between these people, but it will be data that they're entitled to create that dialogue.
Okay. I don't believe that there's ever been a problem that I know of about somebody going to RTC and asking when was what funds were spent on the road in front of my house and when was the last time you did it. I don't think that there's ever any problem with that. And the reason I asked you about, where will you draw the line between what was in 1997 and 2004, it's hard to know that line. I mean, because without knowing that line, you can't you can't come out and blanket say everything. You just got to kind of say, okay, Kroll, you got go down and find out who did Sunset Park Drive and when did they do it last. Mm-hmm. There's no problem about doing that, none. And finding out how much money was spent on it, none. But I don't think I can't. If I went and said, hey, how much did you spend? I don't know where the line would be to do that in gross about every street?
Well, I think we start, again, from my perspective, sir, we start with what you just said, a breakdown, a simple breakdown. I don't know that we can take one drop out of the well and be accurate in terms of how much it represents of the entire well. I understand that. But I do believe we have to start with a definition.
What you're interested in then is expenditure by ward.
That's one part of it. Go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, I want to finish answering Lori's question. Now, the original bill was supposed to expire in 2012 to pay the state back. And again, Mr. Mayor, we just want the roads repaired, you know, and if you could put some signal to us as to when you're going to do this, because we not only have road problems, we've got some severe drainage problem caused by the freeway. I mean, when my neighbors right across the street get 3 inches of water through their whole acre of their property because of improper drainage that's going right by their house, and it happens to be right across the street from me, and I'm glad he's got the creek and not me. You know, I've got some real concerns that the city is not doing what they're supposed to be doing by their own charter.
Okay, well, I think what I'd like, what I'm going to ask, and this will be done outside this meeting, I'd like to know what the condition of the road is in front of Paul's house, and I'd like to know what the expenditure by ward is. That's a gross number. I'd like to know that. Okay? Supervisor Bonkowski.
Just an add to Mr. Mayor's comment, do all of Appian, and you can start at Silver Sage and just go east. We'll start with people out there putting their own culverts in and all that to get the water out of their house.
Paul, I have a question for you. You know, I hear you say that you want the streets in the south part of town fixed.
I also said I was selfish too.
Right, but what I'm reading between the lines is you want your street fixed. Because, no, let me finish.
Okay.
South Carson from Fairview to the 50 West intersection, junction, we could spend $5 to $7 million today to reconstruct that street. It needs it now. That's the entire budget for the entire city for 5 to 7 years. That isn't going to get your street fixed. So there's a math problem here. And it isn't going to be solved by arguing about the 9 cents. What we need to come up with is a funding mechanism that is sustainable and adequate to fix our streets. That is what's going to get your street fixed in front of your house. It's not the 4 cents, it's not the 5 cents. Until we come up with a funding mechanism that is generating, and you saw the slide up there previously with the gas tax indexing, we need 20, 30 cents just to be able to maintain our streets and keep them from deteriorating. So I'm like Lori, I thank you for bringing this forward, but I think that we need to have a much larger conversation about how we solve this problem, because I don't see how we fix the street in front of your house on a cul-de-sac when we have our main arterial that needs $5 to $7 million worth of work. I mean, it's a bigger conversation that we need to have.
And I do appreciate that, but it's still, we need to find some ways to make this work. And I know that everybody in here is capable of doing that if they put their heads together.
That's one of the comments that I'll finish with, and that is, well, I lie a lot, so one of my last comments.
On the one hand, you and I know that trick.
That's very true.
Yeah, I got you.
That is one of the great tragedies, because what I've sat here and listened to, aside from these issues that we've come up here to present, it's on the wall, is there's a sky is falling mentality about this. You better come up with something, because what you have right now ain't enough. And eventually, you're not going to have any roads that don't have potholes. And as a person who has an office here, I don't live here full time, I like to see it better. I have an interest. I'm not a voter for you. I'm down in Clark County. I deal with those nuts down there. But the bottom line is, that's what I have to deal with. But you know what? That is a tragedy, and I think that Brad has a point. That has to be a discussion too. But the plan that we're here to discuss here today is a plan to help these people, understand where the money's gone, where it's been done, where the priorities are, whether it be ward by ward or otherwise. Give them data that they seek, data I don't think I've heard anybody here object giving. Certainly the mayor has not, and I don't think anybody else has. And then we can go from there, because you're right, there is a greater discussion on the horizon. But this will help them to understand how that discussion should go too.
Yeah, we're going to have the discussion with respect to law enforcement too, because it's Rick, so we'll see you back here on that one. But
I've just got one.
I'll check my calendar.
I've just got one other comment to make, and this appeared in the Nevada Appeal on 12/13/2015, and this happened 30 years ago in this community. Emotions exploded Thursday between the public and the Board of Supervisors over a major water and sewer rate increase of 75% and 64%. Now, wouldn't that be something if we had a major uprising of the citizens and wanting their damn roads fixed? Just as a parting comment.
okay, thanks, guys. Thanks, Rick. Good to see you. Okay.
I can't bring this back to the board, right? You're going to work on my petition?
We'll see where it goes, Paul. I don't know. Good morning.
Push this button.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. My name is Tim Howard. I'm a citizen of Carson City, Nevada. I've been at this supervisors meeting before, and I'm part of the John Q. Public, okay? So I'm going to get it down to the nuts and bolts and the beans. What we have here is two problems. What we have is non-transparency and also making problems that continue to fester instead of correcting them. The two problems, one, I can see a partial, I'm trying to give you solutions. We need solutions here, okay? The one big main problem of our streets in Carson City, and to correct the situation, is not to continually perpetuate and tear the streets up and not bring it back to their original condition. For example, the street that I live on, Valley View Drive, the street was perfect. It was okay. The city comes in there, tears it up to put sewer in, and then we got potholes in our street. It looks like we're in the middle of the Watts in Chicago. I feel that we need to have not only we have building codes where we have inspectors that come out and inspect our private stuff that's done. Why don't we have inspectors and inspect the repair work that's done up to standard and make sure it's brought to correction? The second thing is this gas tax. True, the gas tax is supposed to have been sunsetted. It was purposely voted in specifically by the citizens for the bypass, okay? The problem with your pie is that you've lumped the gas tax all in one. I've spoken with you before about separating the specific tax for the freeway and the regular road work, and it still has not been separated. You need to separate that, because once you pay off the bond and for the specific for the freeway, well, then it ends. So I'd like to see the board get this clarified and get this cleaned up so that we can all move on and smooth things out.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, good to see you again. Good morning, or good afternoon, I guess.
Did I do that right? My name is Krista Leach. I live in the south end of town on Bigelow. I own 3 one-acre parcels in that area. And I did sign the petition, but I'm not here to really speak about that. I just want the board to understand what our roads do look like, if you haven't been down in that area.
So I drove it the other night.
I have lived in that area for 25 years. I came to Carson City in 1979, and the freeway was 10 years out back then. So it's taken some time. But anyway, our roads are primarily chip sealed. There are parts that are not even paved yet. As the previous speaker mentioned, we have significant cut lines for the infrastructure because we were made to hook up to sewer not too long ago. I'm not sure, some years ago. And the maintenance that has been done is haphazard. We walk that area all the time. We don't have any sidewalks. And now the freeway has essentially cut us off. We're single family, 1 acre primarily. And if you go by density of population, as this gentleman in the vest said earlier, we will never have any of our roads addressed because we don't have a lot of population in the area. It's dangerous to walk on Kuntz and Clearview. And my question to the board is about the Valley View non-motorized bridge and why it is no longer on the table. Because it's difficult to walk, it's dangerous to walk, it's even more dangerous to bicycle and to ride your horse. And we are now cut off from the Prison Hill area. So,
Remind me again about that one. The non-motorized bridge.
If I may, just to remind you, I can't remember the exact year, but the open space body actually funded for a very preliminary design for what it would take to build a bridge to serve non-motorized travel of multiple kinds, including equestrians and walkers and bikers and what have you, at the Valley View alignment. So preliminary design was done, but there was never a funding source identified to construct, that type of a bridge. And the only thing that I can mention that people might not know is that NDOT, in their design, they did indicate that they would design the freeway so that it could be implemented in the future should the city find the funding available to do so.
it's my understanding that the city agreed to take responsibility for the bridge from NDOT, and I don't understand why, if there's no funding available for that.
If I may, I don't believe that we ever took responsibility. They never had responsibility for the bridge. NDOT's position was that they never committed to do that in the first place. And if the city was interested in doing so, then the city could find the money to do it. And they would not prevent the city from doing that, but they had no responsibility to do that.
I would like to, from my perspective, I think the roads, you have a very difficult job to do, and I respect that and I understand that. But like I said, we are not a very densely populated area, and now we are significantly cut off from other areas because of the freeway construction. We desperately need to have a non-motorized bridge as well as have our roads improved, and that is just my comment. I understand the difficulty that the board faces and the Transportation Committee faces in dealing with those issues. Thank you.
Well, thank you. One other question. Darren or Patrick, what role does density play in the calculation as to whether or not a road should be repaired, replaced, or fixed?
It's a factor, but it's not, we look at safety, we look at density, we look at the actual condition of the pavement, we look at, did we get one complaint here over the last year or did we get 50 from 50 different residents? Those are all factors that we take in when we go out and try and. Now, when I talk about fixes, these are the things that we do when we do potholes and crack filling, that sort of thing. When we're talking, replacing sections of road, which would go before the RTC, that's all determined by our software that we have that says, if you have $500,000 this year, the best bang for your buck is to fix these 3 places, and we follow that.
I don't know that I ever would have come forth and called anybody about the road conditions had Sheriff McGrath not brought this to my attention. So I guess I'm one of those silent majority generally, but I do think this is a really important discussion to have, and something needs to be done about it. And I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, you're pretty articulate for being the first time up here. All right. Who else? Anybody? All right, this is an information item only. Unless there's somebody else who wants to speak, we're going to move on. So, all right, and I appreciate Paul. I told Supervisor Shirk one night, I said, I've known Paul. I could probably tell stories about you, but I won't.
You did.
I did tell. Okay, all right. All right, let's take up the approval of the bills, 26. Anybody have any question with respect to the approval of the bills? Motion's in order.
I move to ratify the approval of bills and other requests for payments by the city manager for the period December 5th, 2015 through January 8th, 2016.
Second.
There's a motion, second on the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, Rick, I'll see you later. I don't see you in the legislature, though, because I'm out of there.
I know that.
You look forward to that. All right. All right, let's take up, I think we can do this. If not, we'll, the amendment to the possible renewal and amendment of the city manager's contract. Has everybody had a chance to look at the contract? Do I need Melanie to come up and see if there's any questions? Looks like there's two simple amendments to it. Everybody okay, comfortable with it, or?
Just a question.
Questions in order.
The city manager has requested that the contract be renewed for 2 years and then annually thereafter. If we went with the 2-year, we would still be doing those annual evaluations. So every July, we would still do the evaluation part. There's no change in that.
That's correct. Every June, that language was left in the request to amend the contract.
Public comment? Board, what's your pleasure? Motion's in order if you want to do it.
Do you have? I move to approve the renewal and amendment of the city manager's employment contract for June 2nd, 2016 to June 2nd, 2018, with the proposed changes as agreed to and reflected on today's record.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Discussion's in order. You're up. Go.
Yes.
Sorry. Go.
No.
Go first. Jim, go first. Go.
Sorry, I didn't have my light on. My question is, if we agree to this per the contract, if I read it right, Melanie, both parties could agree to terminate the contract at any time, or could you briefly explain that?
That's correct. That language didn't change either, my understanding. It's the same language that you guys approved 2 years ago when you entered into this agreement with the city manager.
That'd take a majority of the board to terminate, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the city manager for agreeing to stay on for 2 additional years with no increase in pay, first. And secondly, I think that he's brought us some really bold initiatives over the last year. And I am all on board to see how you can implement those and what new proposals you can bring us going forward so that we can create sustainable systems for our city. Thank you.
And I'd just like to thank Nick. We heard from the building department today about the response and from Aaron West with regards to the lack of complaints with regards to the building department. And Nick, you were a large part of changing the format of the way the city operated with regards to our building department. So thank you for that.
Anybody else? You know, I was going to say some good things, but you kind of screwed up the camera today.
It's a manual camera.
Manual camera.
We're going to come up with a new nickname.
No, I agree with what's been said, and you know, I have my hat's off to you, Nick. I mean, we use the word transparency a lot, and I think the Carson City Connect. I think I'm correct in saying, when somebody reports something, your instructions to your staff are you'll either have an answer or fixed, or how you're going to do it within 24 hours, and that's pretty tall order. But I think, that's the epitome of transparency. And on expenditures, putting the entire checkbook on in a searchable database is also transparency. And from a historic standpoint, I know Paul was talking about, what happened in 1997 and things of that nature in 2004. From now on, with the Granicus system, you will be able to type in freeway or I-80/580 bypass or whatever, or gas tax, and you'll be directed immediately to the place on a video where that word and that term was discussed. Pretty pretty good in terms of transparency. So, you know, my hat's off to you in terms of moving in that direction and also your ability to move things quickly. I mean, because I think sometimes government goes slow, probably sometimes on purpose, but I think, you know, I'd like to think, you know, it's kind of the Marine in you that, you know, you don't suffer fools, but you get things done. So that's my 2 cents. And so on the motion, unless there's further discussion on, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Welcome back aboard. I say that, welcome aboard, you know, I could bring you aboard too.
Navy guys.
You know, okay. All right. Unless there's an objection, we'll just go direct to the Board of Health.
I object.
Yeah.
I object.
All right. We're going to take a lunch break until 2 p.m.